Noah thanked and seeing that Alexia was confused, calmly explained. It is a great honor, so it should be taken with pride. The king, thoughtfully stroking his beard, said with a serious look that he wanted to talk about the fate of Noah and his father. A huge adventure called Sleeping the Sleepy Turtle finally ended. All the battles and losses were not in vain, because all this brought the heroes to this triumphant moment. Noah stood on the threshold, nodded silently, and smiled. New roads were waiting for him, but the promise was always remained with him. Noah thanked and seeing that Alexia was confused, calmly explained, "It is a great honor, so it should be taken with pride." The king, thoughtfully stroking his beard, said with a serious look that he wanted to talk about the fate of Noah and his father. A huge adventure called Sleeping the Sleepy Turtle finally ended. All the battles and losses were not in vain, because all this brought the heroes to this triumphant moment. Noah stood on the threshold, nodded silently, and smiled. New roads were waiting for him, but the promise was always remained with him. Noah thanked and seeing that Alexia was confused, calmly explained, "It is a great honor, so it should be taken with pride." The king, thoughtfully stroking his beard, said with a serious look that he wanted to talk about the fate of Noah and his father. A huge adventure called Sleeping the Sleepy Turtle finally ended. All the battles and losses were not in vain, because all this brought the heroes to this triumphant moment. Noah stood on the threshold, nodded silently, and smiled. New roads were waiting for him, but the promise was always remained with him. Noah thanked and seeing that Alexia was confused, calmly explained, "It is a great honor, so it should be taken with pride." The king, thoughtfully stroking his beard, said with a serious look that he wanted to talk about the fate of Noah and his father. A huge adventure called Sleeping the Sleepy Turtle finally ended. All the battles and losses were not in vain, because all this brought the heroes to this triumphant moment. Noah stood on the threshold, nodded silently, and smiled. New roads were waiting for him, but the promise was always remained with him. All this was made possible by small symbols that most people do not even pay attention to. Without a combat gift, he will not become the head of the genus Aldheim. It was an unwavering rule. That day, the guy was quietly sitting in a cozy, hidden library among old yellowed books. He thought deeply, thinking about his last step. He soon sat at the table, carefully depicting these signs on paper, carefully paying attention to all the details. Finally he rose, feeling that this evening he would have to say goodbye to these walls and childhood memories. Having collected all his courage, Noah went around the mansion and thanked each servant for their invisible support for many years. The month passed. Noah was sitting in his room. Everywhere around him lay leaves with notes. Finally, he was able to solve all the characters that were carved on the stove. He quickly approached the librarian and, remembering the advice, laid out the books in the order that was listed in his records. Suddenly, one of the cabinets creaked and opened, showing a secret passage. The servants were silently passing, and although he was accustomed to this cold silence, he still bowed politely to each of them. It was thanks to her that he had the desire to treat others as he would like to be treated. As soon as I went into the yard, a mocking voice came behind me. That was my younger brother Glenn. Glenn smiled and said confidently that after the expulsion of Noyev, he became the only legitimate heir to the head of their kind. Although the room was underground, it was flooded with a bright magical light that created a fabulous atmosphere. Noah has not read any of these books yet, and it seemed to him that real treasures of knowledge were collected here. He recalled that although they have different mothers, they still remain brothers, so they are not going to desire to glen evil. The younger only rolled, called Noah as shame of the family, and said that he would not regret this failure. The text was written in a strange, unusual language, so it was not possible to understand it immediately. It took the whole weeks to understand. But the guy was in no hurry. He had enough time. When he heard his brother laughed, he immediately reminded him of his father's sentence. With a slight smile, he asked Glenn that he was so pleased. During his words, Glenn raised his hand, and suddenly a fire broke out between his fingers. But Noah remained calm. In the light of the fire he saw not the defeat, but a hint at the beginning of his own unknown road. A flame ball broke out in Glenna's hand. Without hesitation, he threw her right in the direction of his brother. He waved his hand sharply, lifting the gust of the wind, and pushed the burning shells sideways, scattering the flames into small sparks. It was these people who determined the path of his life, though Noah was not yet aware of how much their influence was. The only thing he remembered is that at 15 years he was destined to leave this estate forever. Noah looked at many hidden gummawaris, discovering knowledge that is not found in the ordinary world. Each symbol hid many meanings and was filled with great power. To master them was a real test, but the guy did not give up. 10 years of hard work. And the runes became part of his mind, so he learned to create magic without any. When the older son was 15 years old, it was time to keep an old custom. He could no longer live with his family. Grummaries from the ancestral storage opened to him ancient magic, through which he was able to subordinate even modern elements. Glenn called his fire in confusion, and Noah just smiled, making it clear that it was dangerous to play with flames. He helped them not through the duty, but from the bottom of the heart. Their secret kindness once pulled him out of loneliness. Going to the gate, he realized that this moment had long been to come, and it is no longer possible to avoid it. Going the corridor, Noah reassured himself. While he listens to his heart, life continues. I spent all my youth behind books, but now the moment has come to finally look at the world with my own eyes. The path of the adventurer is the only road that allows him to feel true freedom and to reveal the power of his wings and magic. He was proud of his skill of combat magic and the ability to control fire. Noah only nodded calmly, because he already knew all this. The guy realized, if you have no special shaky, no spell will be given. This is indisputable truth. Lord nodded in response, taking the news without any visible emotions. Silent whispered, asking his son no longer to disgrace the honor of their family. The relief returned him a calm appearance, and in the meantime, Noah was boldly going forward, preparing for new trials. He briefly replied that he agreed with his father, believes that Noah is too simple and has no ability to magic. When he was stepping forward, he was overwhelmed by anxiety and at the same time a delight that was waiting ahead. In his palm, he kept a small fireball that burned brightly, showing his strength and reminiscent of his brother's inferiority again. In a noisy trading area, he was drawn by a lively atmosphere, so he decided to stop and relax for a short time. Human crowds laughed and traded with each other, and Noah was delighted with the vivid paintings of everyday life. Noah acknowledged that his brother's magic was truly powerful, but he was determined not to allow any linguistic flames to even get closer to himself. The shopkeeper waved him with his hand, inviting him to try the famous sandwich because the guy rarely left the estate. Noah stretched out a gold coin, and the seller, a little surprised, asked if he came from a rich family. But the guy just sighed and said that it was all that he had. Thanks to his talent before decryption, he was able to understand many ancient signs that were very different from the modern runes known to him. The merchant with a slight surprise deducted the rest, 99 silver, and handed the treat. The merchant looked at him more closely and guessed, he apparently stands before him from the Aldheim house. Noah nodded silently, without words agreeing with this new role. On that day, Noah approached the cart that stood on the side of the road and asked the driver where they were going. The driver, without being distracted from his work, replied that they were heading to the level up, and suggested that he'd join if he wanted. The guy thought for a short time. The levelope was located somewhere in the east, in the lands of Wade. However, he still got several coins, gave them and took a place in the cart. An angry brother shouted, "Continue and leave from here!" He was unfortunate that they could not become truly loved ones, but it would not be possible to avoid separation. The cart was always mysterious and a little fabulous for him, as if designed to start a new adventure. There were several men inside the tables. They looked at the newcomer with interest, studying each of his movement. First of all, he decided, you need to make money for a trip. Only a handful of coins ring in his pocket. Noah said greeted and apologized for the surprise. In response, he was simply nodded, without words, but without anger. The cart went on. At first, Noah had to leave the land of Aldheims and get to the nearest guild of adventurers. He spent his eyes on the familiar walls of his native estate and thanked his father for everything that was in the past, whatever it may be. Turning, he went fast forward. Meanwhile, Glenn was already boasting his father who expelled his brother. It passed for a while, and one of the passengers asked why Noah was going to level up. Noah explained that he wanted to join the Adventure Guild because he needs to make a living. Glenn, with a confident smile, promised that he would arrange everything and quickly ran out of the room. The father put his documents, went to the window and thought for a long time, looking into the distance. The man smiled and said that things are going well in the city now. Noah listened carefully. He told further, earlier the town was very poor, and people had to start with the fact that they fertilized the dry land. Then he looked at Noah with surprise. The guy knew well the history of the city, which almost no one remembered. He said he learned from books. The man called Eder and said that not everyone was familiar with the history of Levelp. He also stressed that all people in this cart, traders. Another man suggested that he share his memories of adventures from his youth. Noah rejoiced in this proposal and gladly agreed to listen. His interlocutor immediately began to tell his story. When Noah listened, he realized how important it is to have his own experience. Because not everything can be learned from books. Some things need to be felt. He was genuinely glad here, in this cart, surrounded by real living stories. Suddenly, the cart had stopped sharply, and Kuker looked forward, as if noticing something important. The horses were worried and began to fuss. Edgar exclaimed from fear, not realizing what was happening. Everyone jumped out of the cart and immediately noticed another cart that stood right in front of them. A huge monster who roared so loudly was standing next to him that the earth shuddered from his cry. Edgar, not hiding his fear, called the creature a demon who attacked another's cart. Another man added that it is a wind tiger, a high-rank monster that almost never appears in the area. Noah immediately realized how unusual this situation is. The passengers of the other cart have already fought with the monster, so they decided not to interfere, so as not to complicate the situation. They returned to their cart. Edgar asked for forgiveness, explaining that if they were interfering, there would be only more victims. But suddenly Noah confidently said he was going to help. All those present returned in his direction. How are you going to help? It's a real suicide. Noah thanked everyone for his care, but explained that he could not do otherwise. After these words, he jumped from the cart. No one ever understood or supported him, so he wore a bitter pain in his soul, which left a strong trace. Now he realized that these people are no different from him, and they are also worthy of getting their chance. Due to his soft landing skills, he calmly and safely found himself on the ground. Looking back, he asked the driver to go further and sincerely thanked for the fascinating stories. The cart was dissolved in a cloud of dust, and the monster howled even harder, releasing a fierce roar. Noah felt the powerful breaths of the monster with the wind on all sides, and realized that the decisive moment was very close. Noah was well aware that the wind tiger was the worst predator in the sky. Therefore, he rose into the air to force the beast to fight on his own conditions. He looked at the warriors below and remembered from the books. To keep the beast, he must be pressed to the ground, then he will not be able to move as he wanted. But the tiger had already jumping up and hanging in the air, preparing with a frantic force to attack anything that happens under it. Noah caused the wind and immediately flew up, quickly taking the initiative. As he approached, he began to turn before the muzzle of the monster to distract him from people. It was very important for him that the predator would only focus on him, and this plan was possible. The tiger, who, to the pleasure in the air, instantly directed all his rage to a young magician. This gave people on Earth a few priceless seconds to move and retreat to a safer place. When the beast rushed forward, Noah cleverly jumped sideways, looking for him to strike him a decisive blow. He has never used ancient offensive magic in a real battle, but now he had no choice. He could not retreat. The guard threw a sword, but he did not have time to catch the weapon. She fell on the floor with a roar. The heart was beating insanely, but he still closed his eyes and focused on the strength of mysterious runes. At the moment when the tiger was a little confused, Noah reached forward and released the energy he was collecting before. A bright purple flames escaped from my palm, and immediately it struck a monster with a shiny fiery ring. Huge runes suddenly lit up in the sky, and a fiery stream, like a dragon's breath, instantly destroyed fur and meat. The monster screamed loudly, covered with flames, and in a moment he crumbled into the ashes, which quietly descended to the ground. The girl in the hood behind the guard looked at a strange purple flame. When the flame went out, Noah went down. He was exhausted, but felt a real relief in his heart. He approached the girl and a warrior, and they sincerely thanked him for saving their lives. The guy apologized to the fact that he was delayed, sharply turned away, and quietly said he had to go on. Noah had already turned away when he suddenly heard the girl calling him and asked to stop. She doubted a little, but she said that she was fine with the horse and could go. The girl nodded silently. As soon as she turned away, Noah used magic and disappeared, as if he had melted in the air like a ghost. She looked around in surprise, but the guy is already a piercing. He disappeared without Tares. At that moment the girl realized, apparently, there was a big magician in front of her, but the features of his face seemed surprisingly familiar to her. Meanwhile, Noah has already rose to a rocky ledge thanks to his charming jump. The moving took away all his strength, but in his soul was warm. For the first time someone thanked him, and this is a new, pleasant feeling of his heart. Remembering how helpless was before, and how he was able to turn his talent to decryption into a true advantage, Noah smiled confidently. After resting, he went in the future, seeking to become stronger. Meanwhile, no less important events began to occur in the mountains. Lord Hildendend worshipped the guests politely, thanking her sincerely for having overcome the difficult and distant path to his estate. Claudia thanked for the warm reception and politely responded to the hospitality of the owners. "Before you, A young girl named Claudia. She is the second princess of the kingdom of Rasta. Glenn, standing next to his father, looked at the princess in confusion. Her beauty seized him. In an instant he realized that he wanted this sophisticated woman only to him. Gildendon looked at this question more pragmatically. He believed that Glenn's marriage with Claudia would strengthen their family's position. He had to hope that his son would not be honored. Lord, with a smile, said he was glad to return them. But Claudia only sighed and said that they were suddenly attacked by a wind tiger, a beast of the highest level. Hearing this, Hildendand was very surprised, and immediately asked how they managed to survive. The guards were already going to make the princess the remarks that she went without permission. But she frankly confessed. She was tired of sitting in the palace, and she wanted at least a little freedom. Claudia confessed in her mistake and said that the wandering magician saved them, straightening with the tiger with only a flash of purple flames. Lord has been clogged. There is no such spell in modern magic, and no well-known magician has such power. Claudia added with a smile that the magician was very polite, had dark hair and stubborn shine in her eyes. She looked at the Lord and whispered quietly, "His name." She never finished, leaving her name unspoken. Hearing the name of Noah, Gildendan stopped for a moment. A boy with dark hair and unclear force reminded him of someone. But the idea that his clumsy son could have such a powerful magic seemed incredible. Claudia calmly said that Noah was first mentioned while receiving Rustai Castle. But the Lord was just confused, and never answered her directly. Not long, Gildendan replied that there was no one named Noah in their family, and that Glenna has long been considered his eldest son. Glenn, with a smile on his face, said he also possesses fiery magic, and can be a successful successor. The princess just glanced at him, nodded a little, and did not even show that her words were touched. Claudia worshipped politely, and said that she would postpone the decision to marry before her return, because she first wanted to carefully understand the affairs of the Aldheim family. She threw the last look at them, sharply turned and headed away. The guards with confused faces hurried after her, and the Lord remained in place and looked worriedly after them. He was aware that when everyone learns about the expulsion of his eldest son, it would cause a great shame, and the family's honor would be destroyed forever. Lord neglected the guardian and realized that it was necessary to find Noah as soon as possible, and turn it until the princess has not yet finally decided. When Gildendan was left alone with her son, she said she was going on a trip, and Glenna ordered her care. As soon as the door closed, Glenn shouted, asking what would be with his desirable political marriage and a beautiful bride. Meanwhile, Noah was in front of a majestic building. It was a guild of adventurers, a place he had previously seen in his dreams. He first saw her nearby and felt a heart full of joy and hope for new opportunities. Looking at the facade, I carefully gained courage, knocked on the door, asked for worrying, and finally crossed the threshold. It was noisy inside. Adventurers had fun, and someone suggested a newcomer that it was better to register first. Meanwhile, in the hall, people discussed important cases. In the middle of the room was a girl, and with inspiration called everyone to immediately go to the Levelope volcano. She said that a monster of the S-class named Fafnir appeared at that place. Lady Siren has already entered the battle with a fiery dragon to stop it. The adventurers froze with horror. This creature was so dangerous that it could threaten the whole kingdom of Rasta, and every minute the alarm became more and more. Some wanted to help immediately, while others warned that with their capabilities, it would only lead to even more losses. Someone noted that the siren is the strongest among all in the guild. However, this does not mean that it can be left alone. The girl wept and blamed herself of everything, and Noah realized, the situation is really very bad. Noah realized that the danger was very great, and thought, maybe he himself should go to the volcano to help Lady Siren. The next moment, he resolutely stated that he was going to level up Alcano to save Siren from the captivity of danger. Silence reigned in the hall. The girl at the reception was astonishing what he is the adventurer level. Noah was a little discouraged and confessed that he had not yet enrolled in the guild and received the official title. The silence became more and more stroke, and he realized that without a guild certificate, it is difficult for them to trust him. It is quite clear. He barely stepped back half a step as he noticed that the conversation about the hopelessness of the situation was getting hotter. I heard it sincerely, and with hope everyone talks about Lady Siren. Her defeat would be a tragedy for everyone. Assessing Fafnir's power, Noah realized that if you leave the witch alone, it will jeopardize both her life and the future of the whole kingdom. Remembering how the Wind Tiger won, he even believed that the ancient runes would help him cope with even the dragon. Sighing, he finally decided that he had to move right now until there was time. At that moment, Lady Siren stood on the hot slope of Labor Lupa right in front of Fafnir, squeezing his sword firmly. She still couldn't understand how this huge dragon appeared here. But she did not intend to retreat. The monster rose, as if a real wall, and from his nostrils, hot smoke clubs that rolled in the air were erupted. At the same moment, the mountain shook a huge roar, and all the bright flares of the flames were illuminated around. Fire waves, like an avalanche, crumbled on a slope, sowing all around a sparkling flame. Siren realized that at such a power of forces she would not be able to withstand her own, although I had no despair in her heart. Noah suddenly appeared nearby. Without turning his head, he wondered if Lady Siren was standing in front of him. At that moment, a spark of hope was lit in her eyes. She was confused and blinking several times, trying to understand who this dark-haired guy with a confident tone. Noah instantly raised his hand, and a large amethyst fleece appeared in the air, which shook brightly. The rune turned into a transparent shield, and when the dragon released a fiery stream, the barrier took on all the flames, protecting them from harm. The solid curtain of the smoke enveloped the arena, and through this haze it was possible to see only the fuzzy shadows of two brave characters and a dangerous dragon. Noah felt the true strength of Fafnir, and finally realized why they were recognized as a S-class. His scales did not even be the most powerful flame. Serena kept her breath and looked at Noah with anxiety. She asked that he just created a miracle. Suddenly, the girl realized that she did not know this man at all, and in surprise she exclaimed, "Who are you and how was here?" Noah briefly introduced himself and said he came here because he wanted to become a real adventure seeker. Without thinking, he went straight to the dragon, despite the loud Serency warning, which shouted that for a newcomer, it was tantamount to suicide. At the same moment, the guy again released a powerful flow of runic energy, aiming directly at the chest of the monster. The blow rejected Fafnir back, and he became angry. Such a brazen attack was a lot of surprised. Noah frozen on the spot. This time the blow was much weaker than when he fought with a wind tiger. Suddenly, a loud demanding team sounded, to name itself and explain whether the dragon was standing in front of him. Noah looked at Serena confusedly, and she, as if not understanding, asked in surprise whether she really called him a monster. The same voice came again, called Noah a man and asked what his magic was. Fafnir himself spoke. He was just awakened after a long sleep, and he was annoyed that someone had burst into him. Noah's head was a strange picture. Did he have all this time communicated with the dragon? The monster laughed and confessed that it was not expected that someone would dare to talk to him. Noah was finally confused in his thoughts, and Fafnir confessed that this unexpected meeting and for him was a real wonder. The young man sincerely apologized for his hasty attack, and explained that he did not want to inflict evil, either dragon or people. Fafnir furled with distrust, thinking that people appeared to put him again with a magical seal. Noah replied that Serena tried to fight the fire dragon, and to protect her from danger, he decided to intervene. Noah promised to do nothing wrong. In response, the dragon closed his eyes and asked if he could really trust his words. Serena, having heard this strange conversation, asked in surprise whether Noah really communicated with Fafnir himself. She confessed that she did not understand anything at all because she said, is the old language of monsters. Noah smiled and said that they speak a very old language of dragons, which only special people can understand. Fafnir sighed and shared that he was once very stubborn, which was why he was locked up for many years. Noah still felt a good soul in him. The dragon, even with a smile, said that he is herbivorous and does not like to destroy something around. Serena still cannot be recovered. Even if the dragon is not evil, it is still a danger to the kingdom, and people will not leave it alone. Then Noah suggested that Fafnir become his servant to keep him from new attempts. The dragon asked if this person really wanted to become his master, and promises to defend him. Fafnir saw that the guy was talking sincerely, so he agreed and suggested that he conclude an agreement with him. Noah painted complex runes in the air without thought, and the bright light immediately raised the wind on the slope. The airflows were spiral, lifting dust and ashes around. Serena effortlessly broke through the storm and noticed how the bright light of the rune was lit around the dragon. When the wind died down, she realized the contract was concluded. From now on, Fafnir became Noah's servant. The dragon, which became 5 times smaller, was comfortable for the boy on his shoulder and quietly moved the wings. Fafnir confessed that the ritual had been easier than he thought. Noah was a real giant of power. Serena was very surprised by his tiny size, and Noah explained that this contract itself reduces the size of the servant. They met by calling their names, and for the first time, the princess had the opportunity to communicate with the dragon personally. Fafnir is satisfied with Murkot, rejoicing that it is now harder to recognize and put it back in captivity. Noah, glowing with happiness, happily said that he received not just a servant, but also a true friend. The dragon, laughing, agreed with him. A few hours later, adventurers gathered around Serena's guild hall, astonished by the news of how quickly she completed the task. Around the Serena gathered grateful adventurers, worrying about her safety. One girl even enlightened and sincerely apologized, thinking that it happened because of her. But Serena smiled gently and reassured her, saying that everything is behind and there is no reason to worry. Noah, standing away and watching everything, barely smiled, realizing how much he really helped. Quietly, almost imperceptible, he went to the exit. When Serena caught up with him at the door, she admitted a little aware that in her report for the guild she wrote only about the successful completion of the task. She did not say anything about the dragons. Noah nodded and thanked her for her care. When he was asked where he was going to spend the night, the guy honestly confessed that he had almost no money, so he probably had to sleep in the open sky. Fafnir, comfortably settling on his shoulders, only shrugged. He didn't care where he had to spend the night. Serena, with a smile, invited both to her home, promising to warm them and treat them with a delicious dinner. She was very proud of her culinary skills and wanted to share it with her guests. In the evening, there were so many different dishes in her home that guests immediately felt a real hunger. Noah enthusiastically tasted every piece, not hiding his pleasure and shouting the approving words. Fafnir also enjoyed the delicacies. He fascinated his wings enthusiastically, knocking down his compliments. Serena, with a satisfied smile, sprinkled with dishes, glad how her friends taste dinner. Laughing with humorous compliments, she confessed that he could not recover from surprise. How Noah appeared from nowhere, and with just one wave of the rune conquered the dragon. Noah, embarrassing and blushing, explained that everything happened because of ancient witchcraft. In response, Fafnir mutilated that the blow turned out to be very painful. Then the guy hurried to sincerely apologize for his negligence. Serena asked if he really wanted to become an adventurer, and promised to help him register tomorrow in the guild personally. Noah gratefully accepted the proposal and appealed to her as Mrs. Serena. But she smiled, and asked to simply call her Serena. He nodded in confusion, and she said with a smile that even without a name she would be comfortable to communicate with him, if so better. Meanwhile, the morning came. In guild, Noah received a questionnaire. He looked at all the points carefully and filled each field carefully. When he turned the sheet, he heard the question, "Is Fafnir really his official assistant?" Noah lifted his shoulder on which the dragon was sitting and confirmed it. The clerk cast a quick look at a tiny creature, and Noah assured him with a slight shaking of his head, which is really as stated. He gave Fafnir a collar with a symbol of an agreement that the city's residents do not accept it for a dangerous monster. The dragon is satisfied with his eyes and thanks, and Serena notes that a new accessory is very much. Noah quietly stood in Fafnir, which squeezed into the metal of the fleece of strength so that she can withstand when he becomes great again. A few minutes later, the clerk returned to 3 minutes, apologized for the delay, and prepared to announce the results of registration. The registering girl apologized to being detained and spent everyone in the hall where talents were checked. Noah, looking at the door, could not get rid of heavy memories of his previous exam. Walking the corridor, Fafnir noticed that his friend was tense and asked what had happened. At that time, Noah confessed that he had already undergone this procedure, and then it ended in a humiliating defeat. A strong man in round glasses was already waiting for them. He politely greeted and suggested that the boy sit opposite himself. He introduced himself as Carl, the chief assessor of the guild, and Noah briefly said his name and focused on the test. Carl put a crystal ball on the table, in which energy threads were trembling and glowing. The young man could not look away from her. Suddenly, the Acer happily exclaimed that Noah had a rare gift to unravel ciphers, and the guy lowered his eyes with surprise. Carl further confessed that in all 10 years of his work, he has never happened to have such a powerful force in this field. Noah frozen on the spot. The talent that his father criticized was in fact a special ability that deserves honor. The Acer said that to meet a person with such a talent to decipher is a rarity, because such abilities are born only once in generations and can change humanity's ideas about knowledge. He was kindly suggested that he think about a calmer profession, but he answered with a smile that the adventures and risk were not frightened at all. When Noah left the office, he finally sighed with relief. Fafnir just smiled and commented that such a gift of fate was really worth rejoicing. Serena led them to the board with tasks and said that for beginners with rank F, it is best to start with the collection of lightweight materials. Noah chose a task in the eastern forest. He needed to find 10 healing herbs, and 4 silver coins were promised. The dragon asked how much food you can buy for this money. The guy laughed and said that it would be enough for 4 big sandwiches. Serena advised to be careful, quickly entering the thick crowns of old trees. Fafnir realized that finding the right plants in these thickets would be quite difficult. Noah confidently noted that the main thing is to have a suitable tool and be careful. I reached out and used a spell to detect materials. Softly radiant plants appeared in the high grass. The dragon looked at it with surprise, considering what he saw a true miracle worthy of ancient legends. Noah, tearing another sheet, jokingly said that all merit should be given to ancient sorcerers, not him. Fafnir nodded in response. When they returned to the guild with full bags, they noticed that Serena, along with the clerk, was already preparing to accept the completed task and issue a well-deserved award. Right in front of them was a large basket on the table, filled with fresh herbs. Noah said that in addition to medicinal herbs, he also grabbed some of the useful spices. Serena just smiled back and nodded. Carl looked in surprise through the magnifying glass that he held his arms, and could not believe that the guy could find so much potion in such a short time. He noticed several magical herbs from Pasnio, which were neatly collected and preserved in a great form. The Elixir came up and announced that Noah had done his first task. The young man politely thanked for such a high appreciation. Carl admired with delight that he did not expect to see such success from the usual decoder. Noah was red and confessed that he was only a newcomer, but Carl assured that most beginners spend half a day to harvest at least a third of such a crop. The assessor was interested in asking which quest Noah was going to pass the next. The guy only shrugged and replied that he had not decided yet. Carl sighed heavily and made a proposal. He has a special task. Noah, slightly lowering his head, silently agreed to listen to what to do. He held out a parchment with a serious look and explained that if the guy took this search quest, then the guild would help. The task said that a rare magic flower should be found in the eastern forest. The level of complexity is B, and for this they promised a reward in the form of 5 platinum coins. Carl explained that this flower opens the path to the elixir of life, which can cure even the worst diseases. Noah mentioned the old legends of a powerful potion that gives strength and health. Upon learning that his rank was just, the guy began to hesitate. But the assessor assured him that it was allowed with the recommendation, and promised to take all the risks on himself. Noah asked Carl why he is so persistently acting if the rates are so high, and the consequences could be unpredictable. At that time, the Elixir sincerely confessed that his daughter suffers from an incurable disease, with which doctors could not help. Carl sighed heavily and said further, he turned to the most famous healers of the whole level, but none of them was able to help. Now his only hope is the elixir of life. He has already got a panacea, holy water, and tea of mermaids, but the same flower can be found only once or twice a year. For the last few years, no one has been able to find it, so Carl is now very hopeful for Noah's unique search talent. Looking at the boy just in the eye, he stressed that he was the one who ordered this quest. For him, it is a matter on which his life depends. Carl sincerely believes that Noah will not refuse to help and be able to save his daughter from a serious illness. Noah sighed hard, realizing how important this request is. Despite the danger, he decided to take the call and try to save Carl's daughter. He noted that this disease concerns medicine, but ancient magic can help to cope with its charming manifestations. Before going for the flower, Noah wanted to look at Charles himself. Carl agreed with relief and invited them to him after work. Suddenly, a man escaped to the hall and, shouting Carl loudly, interrupted the meeting. He ran and reported the trouble that had happened to Mrs. Charles. Noah, Serena, and Fafnir immediately worried and looked with anxiety. Carl hurried home as if they were chasing after him, almost pulling the door from the curtains. Noah was walking nearby, keeping up for a moment and watching him carefully. When they entered the house, the worried Sarah met them and led them to the room. There, the doctor leaned over a girl who was unconscious. He looked exhausted and confused. Sarah said that Charles had unexpectedly fainted, and the doctor only knew his shoulders, not knowing why it happened. When Noah wanted to speak, the doctor brotherly interrupted him, but the young man stayed confidently with his and did not give up. He suspected that it could be a curing of magical meridians, a rare magical disease that ordinary medicine cannot give advice. Noah explained that mana is constantly moving inside the body, and if the channels are blocked, a person loses consciousness. He cautiously touched Charles and handed her a gentle stream of strength. The young man explained that this only relieves the symptoms for a while, and true healing is possible only through the elixir of life created from the same flower. The girl's breathing became equal. Noah said he would go to look for a flower now, but Serena stopped it, reminding that it would be darkened and dangerously go dangerously. She insisted on to go with him. Carl reminded her of the artifacts to search, but there was no time to delay. Serena explained that the locators would not have time, but Noah confidently stated that he would find a flower even without them. The couple sincerely thanked them and wished them good luck, asking to be careful. After that, they hurried to the street. Noah turned on the spatial jump, reached out by Serena, and said to hold firmly. In a bright flash of light, they both disappeared, leaving behind the alarming silence of the old estate. The light breeze of the eastern forest refreshed them, and the shadows of mighty trees stretched around. Fafnir was flying nearby, ready to start search. Noah took advantage of the fleece to feel the weakest trace of the flower aura, and it was at that moment that their dangerous adventure began. In an instant, they were in the middle of a thick forest. Noah said they would continue running, starting to look for a magical flower that they wanted. He returned to Serena and asked if she wanted to run with him. The girl smiled and nodded silently. Then Noah accelerated sharply. His feet of the languages broke away from the ground. Two comrades of the arrow were rushed between the trees, leaving only the light breath and the rustle of leaves. They realized that a magical flower could only blossom in a place where a lot of pure mana gathered. Fafnir, conveniently settling on his shoulders, said that once many years ago, this land belonged to the fairies, but now they are not visible here. No one appears nearby. If the fairies grow these flowers and now they have disappeared, then they were abducted, or something even more horrible happened. Suddenly, Serena tensed and quickly pulled her sword. It seemed to her that someone was still nearby. The dragon praised her for exceptional care. From the depths of the forest, a shadow suddenly appeared, which rapidly moved between the trees. From the forest, a huge creature with a 3-year-old growth on the head appeared and stunned. Serena lifted the sword lightly, took a stand for battle, and was preparing to repel the attack. She rushed forward and in a moment cut the monster in half with an extremely strong blow. Fafnir rapidly rose into the sky and hit a powerful stream of flames, destroying everything around and getting rid of even a hint of danger. Noah stood on the side and just blinking in surprise. So quickly and skillfully they acted. He confessed that he did not even notice how the monster got so close. He said it was a real coordinated teamwork. Serena has cheerfully winning the dragon, as if she said, "You still need to work a little, a newcomer." Fafnir in response noted that the true experience in battles comes only over time. Meanwhile, the sky became darker, enveloping the forest in the evening twilight and shadows that were clearly standing between the trees. Serena was concerned that they had no flower yet. Meanwhile, Noah closed his eyes, focused, and heard a barely tangible call of mana. He showed his hand deep into the forest as if it were a compass, and together they walked forward, trusting a quiet inner call. In the end, they went ashore of a secret lake, where the water was calm and silver willows grew around. Serena brought her eyebrows, surprised to see why a rare flower chose this unusual place for herself. Perhaps this is what her special secret is hidden. Serena looked at a strange terrain in surprise and wondered why this flower was growing here. Noah explained to her that, although this plant is not water, the strongest flux of mana goes from the depths of the lake. Fafnir tilted his head, noticing a weak mark of Faik magic. Noah agreed with him, because the signal from the search flower also came from this place. Serena sighed and decided to explore the area, even if she is not very possible to swim. And Noah boldly took a step forward, because it is more important for him to complete a task than to be afraid. The girl exclaimed, "Wait!" But the young man just smiled, said he wanted to look around, and confidently stepped just on the water. A transparent air cocoon suddenly appeared around him, like a glass ball that fell off him from the cold earth. Noah dived under the water column, moving smoothly, like a fish driven by an invisible wind. Serena stood on the shore and sighed me mentally. He was so impulsive, but confident in himself as if the element itself obeys every step. At the depth, he used his ability to detect, listening carefully to the echo of ancient energy, which broke through the thickness of the sludge. On the very bottom, a dark ball glowed, whose aura was clearly different from the calm and soft sand around. Fafnir wondered what it was, and Noah immediately recognized. Before them, a spatial fault, a rare phenomenon that has remained since ancient magic. The young man explained that these portals connect very distant worlds, but who created this portal is a great secret, worthy of a whole chronicle. The dragon noted that such witchcraft can only be made by fairies, so their disappearance is most likely related to fault. Noah made a step forward, but came across an invisible barrier that threw it back like a wall of stone. Fafnir decided to try to burn the shield with the flames, but when the fire touched the water, he immediately went out without leaving any trace. Noah did not give up and asked for another minute. He gathered all his strength, and in his palms shone runes of destruction. The rays of the mana cut the obstacle, and the barrier split, scattering sparks like fragile ice. At the same moment, the dragon suddenly turned to the boy, and Noah raised his eyebrows without realizing what happened. Fafnir warned, "An unknown creature approaches the darkness, and now the moment has come to gain the first combat experience." Noah was swollen and tensely began to listen, catching a barely audible rustle of mana and deaf sounds of steps somewhere underwater. In a few seconds he realized where the threat came. A terrible creature came from the darkness, and the water in the lake was lightly fluctuating, as if suggesting that something evil was approaching. Noah's eyes expanded with surprise, and he exclaimed when he saw a danger. The monster was sniffing completely simply behind their backs. A giant sea snake suddenly appeared from the depths of the dark lake. His sharp fangs shone from anger, and the open mouth was looking for a new victim. His body wrapped his friends like a spiral, and he was ready to swallow any victim with one sip. Noah and Fafnir stood still, carefully evaluating each other. The dragon's eyes flashed in rage, and his scales shone with dark magic. Despite the deadly threat around, the guy stood firmly, as if a real hero from an ancient legend. He still did not believe that the sea beast remained in the fresh lake, so far from his native ocean. The serpent was angry and loudly roared, offended by the fact that some strangers unexpectedly disturbed his peace. He grunted that he slept calmly until people began to flutter underwater in the middle of the night. Noah finally realized, this monster speaks the language of monsters and remembers some mysterious spirit of darkness. In response to his question, the snake said that he did not know the details, because that spirit pulled him out of the depths by force. The guy thanked, remaining calm, even when he was so close to sharp, predatory teeth. The snake was confused, seeing that his mortal was not afraid. Then Noah explained that his decantator's talent allows you to understand any language. Raising his hands up, he assured that he did not want to quarrel and asked them to be missed. The monster smiled, thinking that it is easier to swallow those who have taken here than to listen to their requests. The tail again grabbed Noah firmly, but the guy instantly applied the heavenly step and escaped from the stone trap up just into the air. Fafnir unfolded his wings and firmly told Noah not to waste time. He would hold the snake himself. The young man already wanted to say something in response, but the dragon reminds, Carly is getting worse every minute, and the flower is needed right now. Noah carefully touched a friend's scales, gratefully nodding and thinking that he would definitely return. He climbed into the air over the lake, and Fafnir remained himself with the angry predator. The young man felt a heart in his chest. Every minute without the elixir, Carl was increasingly risky. Suddenly, sharp fangs of the marine serpent flaunted near Noah. They almost touched him. The predator opened the mouth wide, trying to grab the guy, but Fafnir immediately stopped him with a powerful flow of flames. After a strong blow, the monster coughed and retreated, defending, and the dragon loudly robbed, warning it not to approach closer. Make sure that Fafnir holds the snake. Noah quickly moved to a spatial crack. It was there behind her that the flower should have. Although he had no idea where the portal was leading, he did not hesitate. He felt that it was there that the goal was waiting for him. Instantly, the young man was in an unfamiliar world where the land under his feet was no longer familiar and safe. The bright sun poured everything around, and the landscape seemed so unusual, as if it had been moved from another world. There was a quiet forest around, and Noah realized that he found himself not just elsewhere, but also in another time. Suddenly, it became clear. It is a special pocket created by ancient magic, and here are not the usual rules of the world. Suddenly, someone was quietly crying and began to whisper in a trembling voice. Looking at, he noticed a girl who sat on the ground scared and hugged his knees firmly. When Noah came closer, he saw scratches on her skin. Carefully put his hand, he directed the healing manu to her. The girl opened her eyes wide. Her wounds healed, the pain disappeared, and she was able to rise carefully. Noah apocals for touching unexpectedly, and explained that it was therapeutic magic. She thanked and said she was a fairy, and then looked at the boy in surprise. He also called himself a beginner traveler, and confessed that he had a unique talent to understand and translate different languages. The fairy nodded her head. Now she realized why Noah could communicate so easily with her without feeling any obstacles. She shared the story of how her people once lived in the Levelope forest until a dark spirit appeared there. The dark essence grabbed fairies and imprisoned them in a space cut from the real world. So, finding a charming flower and breaking the seal is their hope of saving the whole people's people. She said that the only one remained at freedom because all other fairies were locked inside a large ancient prison tree. Noah was surprised and could not understand why the spiritual darkness needed Fair Polonyanka, as well as what he plans to do with them. The girl also did not know this, but felt that everything is much more serious than simple captivity. On her question, he answered that he was looking for a charming flower that could save the seriously ill girl. The fairy burst into a sincere smile and said that charming flowers were really growing here. She was comfortable on her shoulders, and then she was easy to follow her. They approached the giant tree trunk, on which exhausted fairies hung without motion, as if they were trapped in a sticky trap. Their little wings were barely moving. The forces gradually disappeared. The dark cocoon slammed them, not letting the step. Noah moved forward, but the fairy grabbed him by the sleeve and restrained, warning, if he approached closer, the attacker would jump immediately. A bronze goal came out of the darkness. A trident horn glowed on his forehead, and a bright nuchel was burning in his chest. The girl said that it was a forest guard, who remained protecting the forest to return the spirit of darkness. It ruthlessly exterminates all foreigners. Noah realized that he needed to defeat this giant to save fairies and get a flower. He promised Fi, which would save her sisters, and asked her not to appear in her eyes until the fight continues. Thank you. The girl quickly disappeared in the thick leaves, and the young man remained alone in front of a huge stone statue. Looking at his enemy, Noah noted the ancient runes knocked on the chest of the golem. He realized that these signs need to be rewritten, but before that, it was necessary to stop the monster first. He broke from behind, but the ghoul immediately felt the impulse of mana, turned rapidly, and rushed forward, not giving him a chance to dodge. Stepping, the giant inadvertently trampled one of the rare flowers. At the same moment, Noah pierced cold fear. There was little time. The ghoul grabbed the guy with his strong iron hands and threw into the air as if he had catapult. The fairy shouted scared when she saw Noah's body falling rapidly from the sky. Fortunately, the ancient runes, woven into his mantle, were able to absorb part of the impact. But the guy was well aware. If you are lucky enough to get under such a blow, he will no longer be able to survive it. During the flight, he turned on the trajectories chain to change the direction of movement and prepare for the attack until the giant had done anything yet. The earth was approaching, but Noah already knew what to do. He thought about how to destroy the golem's runes and save the flowers with the fairies. By activating the trajectories chain, Noah avoided falling, easily sliding on the ground. The next moment, he rose and began to rotate around the golem. He understood that he could not give a monster to further destroy precious flowers that could save human lives. The young man caused an absolute fire, and a powerful flow of flames swayed from the sky, covering the bronze body. The flames just buried the surface, neither cracks nor visible damage. Noah frozen in place of surprise. The fire touched the golem, but his metal skin remained intact. I immediately realized that the guard was much stronger than I thought before. It is definitely not ordinary stone or tree. Without hesitation, the guy immediately changed the approach and targeted the magic shot directly into the hardy nucleus. The fairy exclaimed. Her little heart shuddered at the experience of a brave hero who dreamed of such a dangerous act. Then he lowered his big fists on the guy with a goal. This blow could take his life instantly. The huge paw hit, and Noah rejected the side as if he had taken up a crazy wind. The broken rib hurt himself when he rose to his feet. The skin of the enemy was solid, like a real metal. After leaning against the edge of the rock, he tried to find a way to get out in despair. But his magic was in vain, like a drop of water from oil. This giant is covered with mithril, a material that is almost unaffected even by the strongest magic. It is difficult in the chest. Your favorite runes do not help, and there is very little time. It was not a regular enemy in front of him, but a real wall of almost impermeable mithric armor. A real fortress that is difficult to overcome magic. Because of this, guard was the main obstacle to fairies. No simple magic could harm him. He raised his massive hand, preparing to strike another blow. Noah watched his every movement closely, analyzing the situation intense and looking for his only opportunity to act. The giant fingers closed in the air. The blow was about to get the guy. Noah wanted to use a spatial jump to escape, but there was less time. Next to Noah with a roar, a fist crashed, breaking the rock. The explosion of the debris dropped Noah back, filling it with dust and stone debris. He did not give a goal a second of rest. He immediately hit the shield in his chest, as if he threw a stone lightning. Everything froze for a moment. The fairy shouted with fear, watching the young man lose his consciousness, is unable to endure pain. Sitting on the cold earth, Noah noticed how weakness gradually covers his body, and his arms and legs are becoming more and more heavier. An iron fist hung over his head. Another moment, another blow, and the mission will be over, and life will disappear with it. He looked through the dusty eyes on the runes that glowed on the chest of the golem. If you destroy these runes, you can overcome the enemy. To escape, until the guard breathes, the fairies do not break free, and the flower will remain for them only a dream. Noah, clasping his teeth, rose to his feet. Each movement was painful, but he could not retreat. If my gift was at least a little like a combat. The thought was in my head, but at once another appeared. The detergent's strength is also a weapon. It is just different. He swayed, but resisted. Even the strongest ancient magic could not do anything against mithril protection, and his spirit remained unbreakable. Noah took a deep breath and raised his hand. "Absolute flame," he said. Red, like ruby, runes instantly flashed in the air. The pillar of the fire escaped, but failing with a strong armor, left only dark traces without harming it. He immediately realized the formula should be changed, otherwise even the brightest flame will only be a hot decoration. I plunged into memories, trying to find another option among the ancient signs that I once translated sleepless nights. His fingers were drawing in the air a new, unusual pattern. The runes of destruction were intertwined with the runes of splitting, creating a special combination. The magic poured from his palm like a silver mercury, heading just to the nucleus of the monster. It seemed as if he touched the very heart of this creature. I have no right to give up right now. This thought was humorously humming in her head. If I do not win, I will not be able to get the medicine, which means that I will not save Carly. But suddenly the guy felt the forces leave his body, as if the invisible hand pulled all his energy. It became difficult to breathe, as if the chest had squeezed a tight hoop. The fiery lines gradually fade, and in the chest it was buried with fear. The forces were melted so quickly that it did not have time to complete the spell. It seemed that a moment ago the magic inside him was boiling and rushing forward, and now seemed to slip outside, gradually disappearing in the air. Noah realized that there was almost no strength. If he did not come up with a new way of fighting, the wave of bronze and mithril would finally drag it to the bottom of this forest. Suddenly Noah felt weak and dropped to his knees. The energy left it as if the water leaked through the fingers. He became angry with the goal, and suddenly became even larger, his huge shadow hanging over the boy like a formidable cloud. The bronze giant grew over it, as if a huge mountain made of stone, which is about to crush everything around one blow. Ashamed, Noah stared at the giant, and the fairy in despair screamed his name, covered with fear. Before the eyes, everything became darker. The consciousness slowly disappeared, and the body seemed to be weighing and no longer obeyed. Suddenly the monotonous hum is a verse, and it was replaced by a barely audible rustle, as if someone would turn around the pages of the old book. Before my eyes, an old book appeared, the pages of which were covered with strange ancient symbols that flicked with soft yellow light. The book was drawn by ancient magic. Every symbol on its pages seemed to be trembling, and the boy seemed that the power of this world was saying to him. There were neither the earth nor the sky around, only the endless space in which the manuscript library of the whole universe floated quietly. Noah carefully read the page about composite, very similar to mithril, and suddenly realized it was here that the main secret is hidden that can lead him to victory. The text referred to protective magic, which reached their highest level, as well as that they were first created by the spirit of darkness. Although it is unclear why this book appeared at this point, it was simply impossible to take the eyes from the written. His fingers reached the shining lines themselves, and he wanted to rewrite the very essence of the anti-magic properties of mithril with all his heart. The text stated, "Mithril absorbs magic if its structure does not change." Therefore, Noah decided to change the location of crystals to allow energy to go through it. After focusing, he began to change the symbols. Instead of rounds, absorption was drawing runes of resonance, gradually absorbing the new formula in his own hands. The power came to life sharply, as if a mighty dragon woke up, and the folio, illuminated by a bright flash, gradually disappeared, dissolving in a flickering light. The title of the Code of Transmutations has managed to blink on the cover before the pages of the book disappeared in the void. Noah came to the ears again, a real sound. These were the splash of the little wings of the fairy and her excited voice, which seemed to dug a guy out of numbness and return to reality. The little creature trembled the wings just above him, and tried to lift it behind the cloak collar, though she trembled from tension. Noah, in sweat and confused, he was barely audibly asked if he was still here, trying to collect his thoughts. Suddenly everything around has frozen. The naked with an angry roar rushed forward and swung on me with his gigantic fist. He raced so fast that the eye did not have time to watch, but the little fairy grabbed Noah in time and pulled him away. It saved him in the last moment. Waking up, the guy realized in surprise that it was this gentle creature that saved his life. He thanked his rescue and said that he had already given himself advice. But the fairy only shook his head sadly. She pointed to the nesting golem. His huge plates shone, and he was already preparing to strike a new blow. The fairy, with despair, pulled Noah further and begged, "We cannot overcome this enemy. We need to retreat." The young man stared carefully at the bronze statue, remembering the strange code of transmutations, which he recently saw. He surrounded the fair with a shining barrier and ordered her to disappear, and at heart suddenly felt a wave of strange confidence. Noah understood that to change the laws of reality only to those who have a huge power. But despite this, he decided to try. He raised his hand, and his heart began to plow the giant cheerfully. The giant had already prepared to make a devastating blow. There was nowhere to retreat. Only a little spark of hope remained in the eyes, which became the only support for the indomitability of the spirit. The young man quietly said the charming formula, relying on the newly created runic scheme that had to at least a little weaken the protective armor. The flow of the flames hit the chest of Alert, trying to get to the ancient signs that gave him the power to protect him. Noah did not intend to destroy the vest. He only had to destroy the runes to break the impassable protection. But everything turned out even better than expected. He did not have time and raise his hand, as he immediately crumbled into pieces, exactly the fragile clay figure. Everything around subsided. Noah frozen on the spot, looking at the huge hole in the armor. It was here that the unbreakable heart of the nucleus was just beating. The fairy was in surprise that something incredible has happened. The reality itself changed at the request of man. The young man stood in the middle of the ruins, not believing that the new formula could change the whole world so much. The scattered parts of the guard were lying under their feet. The heavy battle suddenly ended with a quick victory. The question about the strange code was not given a rest, but he decided to postpone these thoughts for later. A fairy and a desirable flower was waiting in front of him. Noah carefully dispersed the rusty rods of the cage. His fingers seemed to feel the freedom that was approaching. The latch creaked, and the door opened quietly. As soon as the castle clicked, the bright whirlwind of fairies with a whistle escaped, and the first rescued immediately rushed to the boy. She exclaimed joyfully and sincerely that she did not hope to see everyone alive, and her green eyes shone with true happiness. Noah smiled, and in his heart spilled so warm gratitude that she seemed stronger than any fire. The suspicious fairy asked, "Are you a man?" But the girlfriend confidently assured that this boy can definitely trust. Noah noticed another fault in the space that appeared under the roots of a giant tree. The road back had already opened before him. But first, the boy needed flowers. He fell to his knees and began to carefully level the soft ground with his hands, turning the layer by layer. The sweat flowed down his temples, and the fairies were wrapped in breath and watched closely at every intense movement of his hands. Only broken petals fell to the ground, and from which despair covered the heart more than any iron goal. "Why am I here if I don't keep my word?" His voice disappeared into the darkness of the forest, dissolving in the quiet noise of the leaves. Behind the wings are quietly rustling. A fairy, which managed to save, gently touches the shoulder, and with sadness in the eyes sympathizes with despair. The darkness became more denser, and even the gentle light of the fairies faded, as if the night had taken away every ray of hope. A large head of the snake suddenly flew out of the lake, and Serena watched with fear every troubled wave. Fafnir gloomily said that the beast is filled with dark power, and much stronger than one could think. Serena guessed that all this could be influenced by the spirit of darkness, but with all her heart she believed Noah would inevitably return alive and bring the flower. The dragon made himself for leaving his friend alone in an unfamiliar world, and it wandered his soul, causing acute pain. Suddenly, a calm voice was heard behind, a familiar and cozy, as if the morning sun after a night thunderstorm. "Sorry that I was delayed," Neye said when he finally appeared. It was whole, just a little soot and very tired. Serena shuddered and immediately fell asleep with questions, looking carefully at whether there were no hidden wounds on it. Noah nodded with reassurance and said, "It's just scratches." The Fafnir exhaled and even more firmly established himself in his dedication to the owner, watching him silently. Noah showed a spatial fault nearby and said he came out. Serena asked what happened to a charming flower anxiously. Sighing, he said that he could not find what he was looking for. Noah saw fear in her eyes and said that hope was still remained. He asked Fafnir as soon as possible to take them to the levelope. The dragon nodded to consent without even hesitation. The young man said he no longer had the strength to use the teleportation. All three were comfortable on the back of Fafnir, and he climbed into the sky, flying straight to the city. While they were flying, Fafnir asked if everything would be good without a flower. Noah nodded calmly, showing that he was sure of it. Suddenly, the guy turned to the emptiness loudly, inviting the invisible figure to appear and not be scared, because the dragon was good. Fafnir looked around and asked who was talking to him, because there was silence around. Noah quietly said that they needed to hurry, because otherwise they would not have time. Meanwhile, Carl, along with his wife and doctor, sat near the bed of Charles, who was still sick and very weak. The father whispered softly to keep her daughter and promised that Noah would soon come back with the medicine. Suddenly, the girl opened her eyes and pointed her finger on a small light that flashed under the ceiling. Carl thought about strange visions until he noticed how a little fairy with his wings slowly sank to his bed. Sarah stood motionless, wide open, looking at the shining creature delicately touches the face of her daughter. The fairy was gentle, her voice was light, as if he had blown the summer wind, and immediately filled the room with pleasant warmth. She said calmly that the miracle time was already close, and added that I had to thank Mr. Noah for hope. She returned to her parents, looked at them confidently, and assured that everything would be fine, reassuring their fear with their decisive look. Carl, stunned by what he saw, looked out the window, and his heart froze from surprise. Above the roofs of the city, a familiar dragon with riders, like a real lighthouse in the dark sky. Along with him, a light was approaching, which had to disperse the darkness and give hope for a miracle. Thousands of small lights that circled in the air were illuminated like a starry rain. In the night darkness, many magical sparks flashed and faded, like living fireflies scattering in the air. Carl was surprised by his eyes. Fairy tale creatures that he heard only in ancient legends suddenly appeared just in the middle of his hometown. Noah, Serena, and Fafnir stood together side by side. The fairies were joyfully circling over their heads, having fun. Everything around looked like a piece of fairy tale. It was so unrealistic. Meanwhile, those amazing magic flowers began to blossom on Earth that no one knew about, and which was a real mystery for all for a long time. The fairies who were liberated returned to the world and brought with them an updated, vivid power of nature. Fafnir, barely hiding the surprise, said hoarse that he did not expect anything from the ally with such a treaty. Noah just smiled in response and reminded that it was time to take on the preparation of the elixir. After long hours of hard work with rare ingredients, the elixir of life was finally created. Carl, who had previously suffered from the curing syndrome, drank herbs and suddenly felt his pain and weakness disappeared from her body. The girl rushed to her parents and hugged them firmly. Her eyes glowed with happy tears. Serena stood side by side and looked with a gentle smile at this moving moment. Carl, not yet come from excitement, approached Noah. Hardly holding back his emotions, he worshipped deeply, sincerely thank you for saving his daughter. Noah was a little embarrassed and asked not to thank him so because he helped not for the award, but simply wanted to do a good job. Mom gently told Carly that she was a second chance to live. The girl thanked the boy with all her heart. Noah watched the family warmth that he never felt himself. He became a little envious and sad at the same time. He realized that such hugs would remain only a dream for him, but at the same time, he did not want to spoil the happiness of others. Noah said Carlu that time to go on. The owner was surprised and suggested that everyone stay together and dinner. The young man doubted, but Carla had fun in her palm and said she was feeling great and dreaming of a juicy burger. Carl smiled and invited Serena and some other to join him. The witch was gladly accepted this proposal. Fafnir pretended to be important and grunted that, although it looks harsh, he would not be able to give up juicy white apples. His words made everyone around. The fairy flying above them, with interest, breathed the aroma of food and happily wanted to try human delicacies. The fairy cast a star look at Fafnir, and at the same moment Noah felt his heart filled with special warmth. He looked at everyone around people, fairies, and his unchanging friend Dragon, and realized that there is now an inseparable connection between them, because they are united by one story. Serena in the kitchen apron, along with Sarah and Carla, prepared dinner. Their joint fuss in the kitchen created a warm, friendly atmosphere. This simple and cozy scene was so moved by Noah that he almost turned tears. He suddenly understood that he finally found his family. It is not the one that blood is associated with, but the one he created, having gone through all the difficulties in the way. Soon everyone gathered at one table. Carl was filled with happiness and told lively, supporting a fun conversation. Her joyful mood was passed on to everyone who was around. Noah realized the quest was finished not only by himself, but also by all who, along with him, overcame these 2 strained hours of trials. Over time, the guy was in the middle of the forest, He has finished creating a protective barrier, and now the dark spirit will no longer be able to penetrate here. He told the fairies that a magical shell was formed around this lawn, which protects their grove from all distress and evil from darkness. One of the fairies warmly smiled and sincerely thanked Noah, calling him an almost true deity for all her sisters. The young man was embarrassed when the fairies rose into the air, surrounded him, and folded his hands as if they pray. A warm wave of gratitude covered him from head to heels. When Noah with Fafnir was going to go on, the fairies were asked to come more often. The young man with a smile promised that he would return at the first opportunity. Later in the guild, Carl solemnly reported that Noah was raised in his rank for his successfully completed task. Noah sincerely thanked for his trust and support. Seeing a great reward, Noah was confused and suggested that he spend some of the coins for the treatment of Charles. However, Carl assured him that he made this money himself and had the full right to dispose of them at his own discretion. "Don't give up," he said. "You deserved it." In the guard hall gathered the turn of adventure seekers who were waiting for the announcement of new tasks. Noah noticed that many people had gathered around. Serena said that a well-known archaeologist from Lodolf came to the city. The news that the scientist is looking for experienced adventurers for the study of the eastern ruins has become a real surprise for Noah. Serena, noticing his interest, emphasized that his ability to decipher ancient languages makes the boy an ideal candidate. The intermediary girl with despair exclaimed that she was looking for a specialist at the same level for a very long time. She said that after arriving from Lodolf, she had long searched for someone with the right skills. She needed a special person, not just a newcomer. When someone from the crowd suggested to elect Noah, people immediately began to support the idea joyfully. In the crowd, someone showed Noah and said that he had an unusual gift to decipher the codes, although he had just joined the guild, but was already able to surprise her. Archaeologist, who came to visit, lifted her eyebrows in surprise and asked what rank this guy, and who was a mini dragon sitting on his shoulder. Noah smiled uncertainly, because he just won the rank E, and Fafnir is his family's under the agreement of his subordination. The girl sighed heavily, clearly disappointed. She thought that such an adventure seeker is not suitable for her expedition. She noted that this task requires a team of at least with a river, and better even stronger. Carl disagreed, emphasizing that despite his low rank, Mr. Noah fulfilled the complex task of level B. However, the archaeologist only dismissed, calling it a simple coincidence. In the hall it became more louder, but Serena confidently raised her hand, ordering everyone to silence. She stressed that the level of the newcomer does not always show true power, and Noah has just demonstrated it. The archaeologist immediately recognized Serena, the famous rank of rank A, and with delight rushed to her. It turned out that Lodolf had a young star fan club, and this girl was among his loyal fans. Noah was amazed at how serious the name of Serena seriously sounded, but she just waved her hand. "They say, you should not pay attention to it." When the guest suggested that Serena become the leader of the expedition, she delicately refused and advised to take this role, because he is best versed in the runes. The archaeologist shone with joy. Now it became clear why Serena was so sincerely supported by this boy. She laughed and said that Noah is quite attractive. Serena immediately answered that there were no romantic feelings between them. At the same time, she confirmed that Noah really has a unique talent. As an adventurer of rank A, she is confident in his skill. She asked if he had already restored his Manu. Noah assured that he was all right, and he is ready to take up a new task. Serena then suggested that you quickly decide everything, to arrange a friendly duel. However, the archaeologist immediately noted that the duel between the E-Rang and a warrior A-Rang seems unfair and strange. Adventurers gathered around and froze in anticipation. Serena strongly insisted that the call was accepted. She promised to use force only at the level of training combat, but warned that the ancient magic Noah could hide the danger. A smiling swordfish rushed forward. "Well, try to get into me, decoder." And at the same moment, two sparks encountered just between them. Serena ran a sword and the blade cut the air, whistling. At the same moment, the blow hit his shoulder, and the sword immediately assured that she did not use all his strength, although it was still painful. Noah nodded and restrained the moan. When Serena was ready to attack again, the guy suddenly disappeared and arose near, like a shadow that suddenly slipped out of light. She smiled, seeing his quick reaction, and sincerely admitted that she would be jealous of how easily he was able to rise into the air. Noah exclaimed that his turn. In his open palm, the flames thickened in his open palm, and a hot fire cloud began to form from it. Serena immediately recognized the absolute fire. She knew well the threat of these purple flames and was ready to evade the attack. The flow of hellish fire was torn out, but instead of rushing forward, it stopped and surrounded Noah, creating a wall of a hot flame that flicked in the air around it. The sword was surprised to see the flame suddenly became a wall, surrounding the guy and hiding him in a kind of cocoon from the fire. Her eyes opened wide, the guy designed to use it as a smoke curtain to suddenly be behind. She turned sharply, but there was no one behind, only emptiness. And in a moment, Noah appeared just behind her. Serena smiled, realizing that Noah had managed to notice her maneuver and took advantage of the spatial step when it was needed. The crowd of adventurers shouted in surprise. No one thought that one of the E-Rang would be able to turn out to the A-Rang participant. The archaeologist watched closely for everything that was happening and could not hide her admiration. This match once again showed how promising the beginner is, better than any explanation. Serena, feeling a little shame under the watchful looks of the hall, finally said, "The demonstration turned out to be long, but everyone realized how useful it is." The girl sincerely apologized for what offended him earlier, and now he has seriously invited him to become part of the expedition to the ruins. Serena has cheerfully winked, supporting the idea, and Noah thanked and accepted the invitation. Soon, Noah, Serena, Fafnir, and their friends gathered on the bridge, getting ready to say goodbye. Time passed incredibly quickly. Serena noted that their short journey seemed like a true fairy tale, full of miracles and surprises. Noah confessed that he learned a lot, even more than he had hoped. The swordfish with a smile noted that next time Noah could well get the rank S, and the dragon assured that he would protect him wherever he went. Finally, the guy said goodbye to little Carl and her mother. In his soul, he felt a slight envy of the warmth that he himself helped return to their family. Noah sincerely thanked everyone for their warm support, and realized that for the first time in his life he was feeling part of something significant. Serena easily reached out, saying goodbye to him. Friends, standing on the bridge, raised their hands up, forming a cheerful chain of greetings and good wishes. Serena departed a little, and barely holding back tears, she whispered, "Let him be happy." She understood how important this moment was for both of them. When Noah walked through the woods next to her new acquaintance, the girl said a little ashamed that her name was June. She said she came from the capital of Ludolf, where she works as an archaeological and engages in magical mechanisms. In response, Noah named his name and proudly introduced his families. Fafnir. Yun watched with interest in a reasonable dragon. Such creatures are extremely rare. The guy just smiled, seeing her fascinated. Soon they approached their transport, an elegant magic motorway that Jun was very proud of. She confessed that this motorcycle for her is a real pride and a favorite hobby. Noah was surprised, because he had never seen anything like this before. The archaeologist put on a helmet and asked if she was ready to go. The guy nodded, feeling the approach of a great adventure. Smiling, he joked that he could take a spatial step to get a place faster. The engine roared, and the motorcycle went forward, piercing the way through the mountains, fields, and thickets, and they enjoyed beautiful scenery around. During the bonfire, they were talking about the secrets that were waiting for them in ruins, dreamed and discussed their plans for the future. A few days passed, and the eastern ruins appeared in front of them. The walls covered with moss stood quietly, as if protecting the mysteries of the past times. The dark passage lured himself, and Noah immediately realized these stone walls retain greater secrets than can be imagined. Without hesitation for a minute, they moved to the darkness, which are determined to learn about the ancient secrets that keeps the place. Yun promised to become a mentor in archaeology for him, because they were awaited by mysterious mechanisms and dangerous traps. She warned that the treasures were guarding the insidious traps, so Noah became even more careful and watched more closely at all around. Noah sincerely thanked everyone for their warm support and realized that for the first time in his life, he was feeling part of something significant. Serena easily reached out, saying goodbye to him. The guy agreed that the warning was well-deserved. Yun quickly came to her senses and explained that she wanted to check how he would react. They continued their journey, but suddenly the ropes hung from the ceiling and grabbed the girl tightly, squeezing her firmly, as if they were alive. The trap was blinking instantly, and Yun was confused because she had no idea how to get out. Noah gathered with thoughts and prepared for action, because he felt the real difficulties in these ruins are just beginning. Noah was not hesitant. He ran immediately. With one movement of magic, he broke the rope and carefully took Yun in his arms. Alexia, stretching and yawning, climbed out of bed and began to take off her clothes. But Noah immediately grabbed Fafnir on his arms and, like a whirlwind, ran out of the room. She joked that she was now ready for any trap that could happen in her way. Noah continued to carry it on a long corridor until they went to the next hall. Yun firmly said that she would not let him go for a moment, and Fafnir decided to go first to make the way. Finally, they entered a room where another key to the riddle of these ruins was hiding. Yun wondered what to do next, and Noah looked carefully at the shadow corners and said confidently that there were no hidden traps here. It reassured the girl a little, but she did not stop looking at him. Noah stared at the wall on which incomprehensible symbols were drawn. Yun asked if he could figure out what was written there. The guy nodded confidently and began to decipher the signs carefully. The records referred to how the father worried about his daughter, who did not behave like other children. Yun was surprised that it had to do with these ruins. Then Noah explained to her that they were holding a page from a very ancient diary. The book stated that it was the 20th year of a runic calendar, a period called the Time of Water. It was on this day that the father taught his daughter magic. Noah has specified that now the 779th year of the same calendar is outside, which means that more than 700 years have passed since then. This confirmed that the ruins remained from a long-gone, long-disappeared civilization. Further, his father began to complain that he had to fight with some turtle dreams, a strange creature. Noah wondered what it could mean. The research has led them to hopelessness. Fafnir said that all other isles had already been checked. Yun sighed hard. So much went, and nothing really was valuable. Jumping out of his back, she said with a smile that it was a wonderful lesson from experienced archaeologists. Sometimes the ruins reluctantly reveal their secrets, so at least it is worth carefully reading all the inscriptions. It was at this moment that Noah paid attention to the imperceptible sign on the wall. It was a hint to find a certain book. Yun asked what kind of book was talking about. Noah just shrugged and suggested going on without wasting his time to explain. The girl quickly came to her senses and rushed after him. Noah wondered. It was here that a book was to appear, which was opening all the secrets. Gathering all his will to the heap, he realized that he should try again. He felt, if an artifact appeared somewhere, it is here. When the guy opened his eyes, the emptiness around disappeared. An open old book lay in front of him. He sighed lightly. Finally, what he was looking for was found. Noah read the notes carefully on the old pages. They revealed to him the mysteries of the maze, where the traps were hidden, how to get around, and also showed a small card with ways that could be safe. On one of the schemes, the guy noticed a ladder hidden behind a massive wall. He immediately added a book to the wall, checking whether he was seen with reality. Changing the space around him, Noah simply destroyed the stone wall and created doors instead that opened the way forward. When he opened his eyes, the wall disappeared and a new dark passage opened in front of him. It impressed even him. Yun was frozen with surprise and barely audible that it could not be. Noah just shrugged and suggested going on without wasting his time to explain. The girl quickly came to her senses and rushed after him. The corridor brought into the space of the hall, and suddenly a soft light broke out around. The torches on the walls themselves lit up, illuminating its path further. Yun spent her hand on metal slabs and was surprised to look at the ancient magic of light fire. It was also impressed with the amazing quality of the alloy from which these walls were built. She suddenly exclaimed that this material is not just stronger than all modern ones. It also has absolutely unique technological properties. The find was a real archaeological sensation. Noah could not hide his admiration. The further they walked forward, the greater their discoveries. Suddenly they entered the hall, where a crystal mountain glittered under the ceiling, but just above it, in the air, as if a girl had frozen. When the crystals glowed quietly around her, everything looked like in a fairy tale. Her figure was burning in a gentle glow. Yun realized that they were not just a doll, but a strange capsule, created with the help of the latest technologies. However, she was still hesitant to voice her suspicions to others. When Noah felt a strong magical impulse, he immediately realized he is a real person, not a dummy. Just now, she is in a state of forced stop. He thought that this mechanism could stop time. Apparently, because of this, the girl remained stationary. In a moment, the inscription "Access Allowed" was lit, and a light stream of steam escaped from the system, as if it had just woken up. Yun looked around, not understanding why the device was turning on at this point. A cold steam came out of the ventilation holes, wrapping them with fresh breath. When the fog disappeared, a girl who was still unconscious suddenly began to fall down rapidly. Noah rushed forward and managed to pick it up just a second before she could fall to the floor. Holding a stranger in her hands, the guy felt a gentle beat of her heart and a warm breath. It seemed like the mysteries of the ruins were just beginning to open to him. She suddenly exclaimed that this material is not just stronger than all modern ones. It also has absolutely unique technological properties. The find was a real archaeological sensation. He looked at her carefully and asked worriedly whether she was feeling well. In response, he heard a quiet, confused murmur in which he was surprised. The girl was scratching and strictly said that she was saying that he was saying, "So he is no other than a deceiver." In a moment, the inscription "Access Allowed" was lit, and a light stream of steam escaped from the system, as if it had just woken up. The stranger accepted the fighting stable, and in her eyes the determination broke out. She was ready to attack again. Noah watched his every movement closely and was more and more convinced every time. This creature is not just alive, but also a very ancient and full of secrets. Suddenly, the girl sang, and her melody immediately penetrated the depth of consciousness, touching the most secret corners of the soul. Fafnir roared loudly, preparing to strike in response, and Noah felt a powerful energy woke up inside it. In an instant, two lights broke out between the enemies. The energy collided so much that the air seemed to break. The battle became fierce, and the fiery waves flew one way or the other. He looked at her carefully and asked worriedly whether she was feeling well. In response, he heard a quiet, confused murmur in which he was surprised. The heat became unbearable. The girl rushed to fiery volleys, and Noah answered her. But in the end, a powerful wave of energy forced the girl to fall to the ground. Then he remembered that she spoke of a language, and realized she speaks an ancient dialect, and her flames were a relic from the past that has long gone. Before him was a woman from an ancient race, a living mention of the era when magic was a common part of life. Noah came closer and said he had no bad intentions. He wants to find a common language. The stranger suddenly jumped, grabbed his feet and squeezed so much that it seemed as if he had got into a real trap. Noah watched his every movement closely, and was more and more convinced every time. This creature is not just alive, but also a very ancient and full of secrets. Fafnir suddenly rose to his huge size and powerfully pushed the girl as if a ram. She immediately jumped on her feet, as if not feeling the blow, but around her sparkling dust, creating a sense of true illusion. Sighing with relief, Noah thanked the dragon. Thanks to his assistance, everything could end quite differently, much more dangerous. There were magicians, archers, and warriors in massive armor. No one even noticed new arrivals. Noah again turned to a stranger, loudly assuring her that they would not harm her. Hearing the ancient language of the runes, the girl inadvertently shuddered. Even this sound ran through her skin cold, because in the modern world it was so difficult to imagine. She wondered if he was from the tribe of runes. Noah frankly said no, and that was even more interested in her. Noah asked for a minute to explain something. She nodded in response without saying a word, and then Noah carefully approached the stranger. He said she was locked in a capsule that completely stopped her time. Thanks to his gift, he was able to awaken her from sleep. She wept, remembering the cruel war of people with the devils and the moment when her father hid her to save the remains of their culture and magic. Noah understood. There is a real living legend of that era, which only old stories have been going on. She wondered how much time had passed. Noah replied that it took so much time that almost everyone had forgotten about this language, and from these words her face became pale. The girl died down, feeling her deep loneliness in this world, which has long become different. She, looking for support, asked Noah to bring her to Heavenly Guard, the old tower, standing nearby. She said that this building was created with the help of runes that can withstand whole eras, and it is important for her to look at this world. Noah addressed Yoon for help. Remembering the tower they saw on the road, the archaeologist decided to agree to his request. Using the spatial transition, they appeared on the very top in an instant. The girl, which Noah now called Alexia, was genuinely surprised by his skill. Alexia stood on the very edge and looked at the endless ruins of Kirkshire, which stretched in front of her to the horizon. It remembers the distant past when these lands were destroyed by wars and ancient disputes. Once upon a time there were only bare stones, but even now, a void reigns in her heart due to the loss of her home. She, looking for support, asked Noah to bring her to Heavenly Guard, the old tower, standing nearby. At the request of Noah in a quiet voice, she began to tell how beautiful Kirkshire was once a rich and harmonious kingdom. People lived here simply, but dignity, always appreciated the unity with nature and cherished this union. She pointed down on a huge stone palm and said that once the masters of her people built a real man-made hand, a giant golem created with the help of ancient runes. Runny Magi Kirkshi were so strong that they could protect the world even from the worst demons who tried to get here from other dimensions. Alexia asked how many people live in the world now. Noah thought for a moment and said that he did not know the exact amount, but there are many. He said that perhaps the sacrifice of the masters of the runes helped humanity survive the dark times and climb now. The words died down, and tears rolled unnoticed on the cheeks of the girl. Because for her, yesterday and today, the whole eternity passed. Noah felt a real shock when she woke up and realized that her native country was gone, and she was left alone. At the request of Noah, in a quiet voice, she began to tell how beautiful Kirkshi was, once a rich and harmonious kingdom. People lived here simply, but dignity, always appreciated the unity with nature, and cherished this union. Yun, who watched all this, moved her tears and quietly said that ancient people were surprisingly responsive and noble. Noah was amazed at this discovery and asked how she understood everything. June honestly confessed that she asked Fafnir to translate her conversation in advance. She asked for a secret to keep a secret. Although she should report to the king according to the rules, the most important thing for her is the health and well-being of the princess. Noah introduced the girls to each other. He said that Yun is an archaeologist who would not think of anything wrong to make Alexia feel calm. Yun politely called her name. Noah also introduced himself and remembered Fafnir, and then politely asked what the name was. A stranger. She called her name, Alexia. Noah felt that this name sounds like an old, familiar song. The girl turned out to be Princess Kirksha and greeted with a smile, rejoicing in dating. Noah was a little confused, hearing the title, but Alexia only smiled sadly and said that now, in this new world, formal titles were no longer significant. Noah felt a real shock when she woke up and realized that her native country was gone, and she was left alone. Alexia confessed that even after so many years in her heart, still lives a sense of duty and royal dignity. Noah answered her with a cheerful smile. She confidently said that she was completely resting on her feet, and Noah, smiling, joked that she had repeatedly convinced how much you could walk. The girl looked at him with the edge of his eye, and he immediately added that it was only a joke. He then told Yun that they decided to travel on foot. Yun was surprised by such a decision and raised her eyebrows, not knowing what to say. Alexia, instead, closed her eyes. She immediately remembered how her father was nearby. She saw her back to her, saying goodbye to her dearest daughter before a long separation. Yun, who watched all this, moved her tears and quietly said that ancient people were surprisingly responsive and noble. None of the younger ones even looked back when she stopped. Alexia just nodded quietly and quickly moved to catch up with her group. Alexia confessed that even after so many years in her heart still lives a sense of duty and royal dignity. Noah answered her with a cheerful smile. She decided not to hurry. Restrained and patiently waiting, the creature felt. She almost touched the desired sleep. Noah and Alexia arrived in Lodolf, a majestic dance city, in which ancient buildings were harmoniously combined with modern architectural ideas. Noah looked around in surprise, not hiding his admiration for the luxury and grandeur of the royal capital. Bolxia, smiling a little sadly, said that even Lodolf could not match the beauty of Kirkshi. A lively world opened at the great city gates. A fuss was in the streets, people were in a hurry, and everything around was like a quick flow of life. Alexia, who was not used to such noise, felt a slight tremor in her hands and hastily lowered her eyes so that no one noticed her excitement. She told Noah that large clusters of people, numerous shops and loud sounds cause confusion and anxiety because it is all so unusual for her. He explained that it was uncomfortable to fight in the usual form of a little dragon. At the same time, it is impossible to rotate in a crowded place. Noah nodded clearly, because Fafnir's excitement was quite natural. Alexia noticed that in the cloak she became more comfortable and calmer. This is probably due to the runes that were embroidered on the fabric. They seem to have had some protective force. Soon they approached the majestic estate with a large, strong door. Jun just went to the house. She announced her return. The maid quickly approached her and took her cloak. Soon Fafnir disappeared into the nearest tent. Noah and Alexia remained outside and waited, looked around, not knowing what would happen next. Then she showed Noah and Alexia, saying that they would have a long time here. Separately asked to pay special attention to Alexia, because she is new. The maid worshipped, approached Noah and Alexia, and suggested that they remove the outerwear. Noah turned to Alexia quietly, asking her to remove the cape. After that, they gave their belongings to the maid. Alexia, a little dizzy after a long road and experienced feelings, confessed that she felt a strong hunger. Yun just smiled and said that she could understand it even without words. It was time to eat. One of the maids approached Noah and politely put forward a chair for him, offering to sit down. Noah was a little discord, but sat down. After that, she wondered if he had any special wishes for food. Young Thomas showed one of the dishes and said it was a special recipe from the cook himself. Everyone greeted each other and began to taste dinner. No one paid attention that Alexia did not hurry to start lunch. She was calmly told that she could already take food. She confidently took the fork and dared to taste the dish she was served. She was a little uncertainly inserting a fork into a piece of meat, and Noah and Yoon were watching her actions closely. Yoon smiled slightly. In Alexia's behavior there was something simple and sincere, even a little naive, which seemed especially sweet. But the next moment, Alexia suddenly stopped, suddenly realizing that her actions looked not entirely appropriate. She carefully put a fork on the table and apologized for her behavior. Noah smiled warmly and reassured her, saying that there was nothing to worry about, especially after such a delay in lunch. The maid worshipped, approached Noah and Alexia, and suggested that they remove the outerwear. Noah turned to Alexia quietly, asking her to remove the cape. After that, they gave their belongings to the maid. Noah immediately came to work. He showed how to hold the knife and fork properly, and immediately demonstrated everything in his own example. While Alexia chewed, he praised her, saying that she was doing everything right. She smiled and agreed, because the taste of the dish became completely different. Noah smiled, asked the maid to give him bread, and, having received it, solemnly divided in half. He then demonstrated how to dip the meat and vegetables in soy sauce. After cooking, he made a simple but delicious sandwich. Alexia hesitated a little, but still decided to try to cook the same taste. Yoon smiled and noticed that it looks appetizing, so she would also prepare herself as once as a child. She was a little uncertainly inserting a fork into a piece of meat, and Noah and Yoon were watching her actions closely. Yoon wanted to tell Alexia with passion, but Alexia almost did not understand what was going around her. Meanwhile, Yoon showed many small bottles, neatly placed on the shelves. Alexia was confused, and did not understand whether she needed to use something of it. She remembered that Kirkshish was ordinary magical cleaning. Meanwhile, Yoon is already sweet hair shampoo. Alexia was surprised to watch Yoon is covered with white foam, and inadvertently wondered why the bubbles were shimmering so brightly from the edge. Then Yoon chose one of the bottles again and squeezed a little remedy on the skin. Noah immediately came to work. He showed how to hold the knife and fork properly, and immediately demonstrated everything in his own example. Alexia said something, but Yoon could not understand anything. Without Noah, who always helped them to communicate, her words remained unclear to Young. Yoon wondered for a moment. Does Alexia hint that she is too proud? And does not boast about what comes from an ancient royal family? But the young man immediately guessed. Hardly Alexia wanted to offend someone. Her face really looked removed, but it is probably just her usual expression. So the young man decided not to get hung up on this. After all, they just came to swim together, and there is no point in worrying. While Alexia chewed, he praised her, saying that she was doing everything right. She smiled and agreed, because the taste of the dish became completely different. After cooking, he made a simple but delicious sandwich. She used magic and called on warm airflows that gently enveloped her head. The third group included court magicians and adventurers of SS. They had to protect the cities from danger. Alexia, with anxiety, asked why it is impossible to simply attack the enemy. Noah replied that the offensive should be engaged in the army, because soldiers have more experience and discipline. Alexia looked at each other and exchanged light smiles. There was a silent understanding between them. However, even these traps did not give any guarantees. They could only delay the monster a little, but it was almost impossible to stop it. Meanwhile, Yoon showed many small bottles, neatly placed on the shelves. Alexia was confused and did not understand whether she needed to use something of it, but the young man immediately guessed. Hardly Alexia wanted to offend someone. Her face really looked removed, but it is probably just her usual expression. So the young man decided not to get hung up on this. After all, they just came to swim together, and there is no point in worrying. She carefully took the bread, lifted her mouth and bit a small piece. Noah was surprised that she spoke much more confident than before. He said it gently, smiling. Alexia also smiled and added that everything is very simple. He turned out to be a good person. Noah carefully wondered if everything was fine with Alexia. The girl quietly asked him to stroke her on her head, and then he reached out, gently touched her soft, silky hair. At that moment, the young man remembered his father. Alexia noticed how his eyes changed and worriedly asked if everything was fine with him. Noah reassured her, saying that everything is fine and should not worry. To divert attention a little, he said aloud that it would probably need to go to the guild and register Alexia. Alexia leaned closer and asked who the adventurers were. Noah replied that these are people who do different work. They collect healing herbs and fight monsters. Alexia listened and nodded carefully, making it clear that she understood everything. Subsequently, they got out of the bath, wrapped in fluffy towels, and stopped near a large mirror. Alexia looked at each other and exchanged light smiles. There was a silent understanding between them. Fafnir carefully oversees Yun and noticed what focus she works with. Alexia was also interested in this and asked what Jun was doing. Noah replied that Jun was creating a new magic device and trying to direct the energy of runes to start the mechanism. Heard very surprised and impressed Alexia. When Noah noticed that Jun had fully admired his work, he decided to go to guild with Alexia. They said goodbye to Yun and left the house, allowing them to dive into their own technological world. Alexia, a little lost, she was registered in the guild and received her first rank, D. Although everything happened very simply, it seemed that she behaved uncertainly and a little awkwardly during the conversation. Seeing that Alexia had plunged into her thoughts, Noah suggested helping and bringing her things to the tent. After all, they will have to sleep in the open air that night, because tomorrow they were waiting for the final battle. Alexia agreed silently, and, although she was very tired, followed Noah. Walking on the road, Alexia suddenly lingered and suddenly asked who was really Fafnir, a boy or a girl. Noah did not restrain himself and laughed out loud, because such a question was completely caught by suddenly. She carefully took the bread, lifted her mouth and bit a small piece. Noah was surprised that she spoke much more confident than before. Alexia froze with surprise. She was not believed in what she saw. Noah's father stood right in front of them. Noah reassured her, saying that everything is fine and should not worry. To divert attention a little, he said aloud that it would probably need to go to the guild and register Alexia. Noah tried to argue confusedly. He was told to leave. But his father silently grabbed his hand, so it was impossible to escape. He ordered to silence and follow him with a strict voice. Noah escaped and exclaimed that he was not going to return. He now has another life and new responsibilities. However, Gildigand released only his son's head, continuing to hold his hand firmly. Suddenly, a burning ball broke out in the air, and it became even hotter around. The father said he would return Noah by force if he does not want to go alone. Alexia leaned closer and asked who the adventurers were. Noah replied that these are people who do different work. They collect healing herbs and fight monsters. Alexia listened and nodded carefully, making it clear that she understood everything. Suddenly a mysterious figure appeared behind, which no one has noticed. In his palms there was magic, which could not only destroy everything around but also give hope for salvation. Noah was stunningly watching hundreds of fiery balls around, as suddenly felt an unexpected power. Without thinking, he raised his hand, and the bright flow of flames escaped from his body. The magic, which just awakened in it, was ancient. It had a purple hue, wrapped the fog and radiated something ominous and majestic. Hildegard froze from surprise. He did not believe his eyes. His son, with flames in his hands, stood in front of him, and it was an ancient witchcraft. This fact was confirmed by the story of Princess Claudia. Gildigand asked if Noah had opened that ancient Greek power. Now he realized that his son, whom he had previously underestimated, revealed his true talent, managed to read ancient inscriptions and master real magic. The battle between them became more and more fierce. Gildigand, angry, exclaimed that Noah is finally worthy of heading their family. But Noah, with an unmoved face, calmly replied that he refuses everything he was offered. At that moment, Noah realized that his father had never perceived him as a person. For him, he was only a tool for achieving his own goals, not a person with his dreams and desires. Noah tried to argue confusedly. He was told to leave. But his father silently grabbed his hand, so it was impossible to escape. He ordered to silence and follow him with a strict voice. Alexia looked into his eyes calmly and firmly said, "If the attack does not stop, someone would certainly suffer." She advised Noah not to hesitate, even if she should oppose her own family. Feeling the power he sought for so long, Noah stood before Alexia. He rushed to defend her without hesitation, even if it could have cost him his own blood. Noah escaped and exclaimed that he was not going to return. He now has another life and new responsibilities. However, Gildigand released only his son's head, continuing to hold his hand firmly. Suddenly, a burning ball broke out in the air, and it became even hotter around. The father said he would return Noah by force if he does not want to go alone. Noah was stunningly watching hundreds of fiery balls around, as suddenly felt an unexpected power. Without thinking, he raised his hand, and the bright flow of flames escaped from his body. His steps were no longer heard, and the silhouette dissolved in silence, leaving a weak echo of magic in the air. Noah, without taking his gaze from that place, finally looked back to Alexia, sincerely thanked her, and apologized for how he behaved. She was silent, looking thoughtfully in the distance. It was clear that she was still trying to understand the events that just happened. It was something incredibly strong. Every second filled the air with a sense of approaching trouble. Noah did not find a place from anxiety. Hildegard froze from surprise. He did not believe his eyes. His son with flames in his hands stood in front of him, and it was an ancient witchcraft. This fact was confirmed by the story of Princess Claudia. Hildegard asked if Noah had opened that ancient Greek power. In ancient ruins, old records were found that prophesied his arrival. He was called the Sleep of a Turtle, a mysterious creature from dreams and ancient predictions. At this time, Princess Claudia approached Hildegard, thanked him for his help with preparation for the mission, and apologized for a difficult day. The battle between them became more and more fierce. Hildegard, angry, exclaimed that Noah is finally worthy of heading their family. But Noah, with an unmoved face, calmly replied that he refuses everything he was offered. Hildegard screamed again. This family was most valued not by the freedom of choice, but by natural talent. They were him, and they were duty to remain strong without giving their power outsiders. For Hildegard, talent was never a gift. It was his fate. Yun, postponing royal papers, looked at Noah and Alexia and said that all the kingdom's resources had already been involved in the case. Even it is hard to believe how quickly everything unfolds. Feeling the power he sought for so long, Noah stood before Alexia. He rushed to defend her without hesitation, even if it could have cost him his own blood. Yun said she would stay in the castle to develop a plan using Alexia data, and Noah and Alexia, meanwhile, can rest in the estate and prepare for the next events. An emergency operation began, which was called Battle of Sleep Turtles. Noah and Alexia remained alone, both with smiles on the faces, although there was tension between them. The little girl came to her mother and asked quietly whether the bad monster really wanted to destroy their home. Mom smiled gently and reassured her daughter, promising that the soldiers of Rastia, the strongest in the whole kingdom, would definitely protect them. The shells flew into the giant body of the creature one by one, but almost did not harm him. A strong shell reliably protected him from all attacks. She was silent, looking thoughtfully in the distance. It was clear that she was still trying to understand the events that just happened. When Jan Raid said these words in front of the royal throne, silence reigned in the hall. Everyone stopped moving from fear. When Noah saw her looking at him, he could not say no. They lay together on one bed, and soon Alexia slept quietly nearby. And Noah stayed without sleep. Excitement and many thoughts raged in his head. Subsequently, he felt something as if his sleeve had squeezed firmly, as if someone's hand had grabbed his clothes. Alexia stood side by side, holding his sleeve firmly, as if she was apologizing and trying to find protection in it. Yana noticed that Noah and Alexia immediately felt as the turtle's dream was approaching. This creature moved so quickly that she had to get to the capital in just 3 days. So they decided that the operation should be started in 2 days on the eastern border. She pressed even closer, frightened by the future battle. In her voice there was anxiety, because the sleepy turtle was not a simple monster, and even in Kirkshish was not equal for her. Noah confidently promised that he would not allow himself to die and would do his best to win. Feeling his determination, Alexia nodded quietly and soon, stuck to Noah, fell asleep again. Wishing her good night, Noah looked around. On the one hand, Alexia was leaning, and on the other, Fafnir. It was cozy, but in the air there was a tension. Yun said she would stay in the castle to develop a plan using Alexia data. And Noah and Alexia, meanwhile, can rest in the estate and prepare for the next events. Alexia gently advised Jun not to forget to rest, so as not to get over. But she only nodded to farewell and quickly went in her business. One soldier in despair shouted that there was no point in shooting. The monster did not stop at all. The excitement commander squeezed his fists and focusedly ordered the fight, although he barely held back the trembling. As soon as the door closed, Alexia noticed a deep silence that covered the city. Only warriors and adventurers remained in the capital, those who were destined to resist the sleep of the turtle. The protective spells were cracking, and the turtle suddenly opened its giant mouth wide, as if it were about to swallow the horizon itself. They wished each other good night, but everyone was left alone with their excitement. Alexia stopped quickly because the anxiety still did not leave her heart. She looked sadly at Noah and dared to ask, "Can we sleep together? I will be so calmer." When Noah saw her looking at him, he could not say no. They lay together on one bed, and soon Alexia slept quietly nearby. And Noah stayed without sleep. Excitement and many thoughts raged in his head. Subsequently, he felt something as if his sleeve had squeezed firmly, as if someone's hand had grabbed his clothes. Alexia stood side by side, holding his sleeve firmly, as if she was apologizing and trying to find protection in it. The cavity of that vi engulfed all the warriors with a cold of fear. It seemed that horror penetrates deep into their souls. At this time, a girl approached the group and said that all adventurers had already received emergency strategic instructions. Noah took the sheet and began to read it loudly. Alexia saw how he was studying the recording enthusiastically and asked what it was. Fafnir also tried to understand, quickly viewed the text, but acknowledged that he did not understand anything. After reading to the end, Noah explained that the army was divided into 3 main detachments. When the commander realized that he was in vain to fight, he ordered everyone to return to the reserve defense line. The third group included court magicians and adventurers of SS. They had to protect the cities from danger. Alexia, with anxiety, asked why it is impossible to simply attack the enemy. Noah replied that the offensive should be engaged in the army, because soldiers have more experience and discipline. Among the commanders of the third group was the father of Noah. It reassured him a little because their units were divided, so it is unlikely to meet on the battlefield. Noah added that many magical traps were installed on the path of sleep of the turtle, called to stop the monster. He quickly gathered and realized that they need to hurry to the garrison, otherwise they would be late. So he called Alexia and said that she changed his clothes too. Alexia, stretching and yawning, climbed out of bed and began to take off her clothes. But Noah immediately grabbed Fafnir on his arms and, like a whirlwind, ran out of the room. But the tortoise moved forward. She crashed the walls and embankments, not giving any chance to stop her pressure. At this time, Princess Claudia approached Hildehand, thanked him for his help with preparation for the mission, and apologized for a difficult day. When the monster approached the second line, the face of the officer's girl became pale. She ordered the adventurers loudly to prepare for melee. He explained that it was uncomfortable to fight in the usual form of a little dragon. At the same time, it is impossible to rotate in a crowded place. Noah nodded clearly, because Fafnir's excitement was quite natural. Noah, Alexia, and Fafnir took a few steps back and began to carefully monitor how the soldiers try to stop a creature whose sizes were twice larger than any monster they have ever seen. The turtle stubbornly went forward, not paying attention to the blows, and the old fortifications under its weight gradually began to collapse. At this time, a girl approached the group and said that all adventurers had already received emergency strategic instructions. Noah took the sheet and began to read it loudly. Alexia saw how he was studying the recording enthusiastically and asked what it was. Fafnir also tried to understand, quickly viewed the text, but acknowledged that he did not understand anything. After reading to the end, Noah explained that the army was divided into 3 main detachments. The first group consisted of Rusty and a magical detachment. It was they who had to go out to the front and meet the sleeping sleep in an open battle. The third group included court magicians and adventurers of SS. They had to protect the cities from danger. Alexia, with anxiety, asked why it is impossible to simply attack the enemy. Noah replied that the offensive should be engaged in the army, because soldiers have more experience and discipline. The commander, watching the disaster, quietly in pain, said it was probably the end. Near him, the soldier barely heard, muffled by the hum of destruction. Noah added that many magical traps were installed on the path of sleep of the turtle, called to stop the monster. However, even these traps did not give any guarantees. They could only delay the monster a little, but it was almost impossible to stop it. The warriors rushed forward, thinking only about their homes and loved ones, and without sorry for themselves. Seeing that Alexia had plunged into her thoughts, Noah suggested helping and bringing her things to the tent. After all, they will have to sleep in the open air that night, because tomorrow they were waiting for the final battle. Alexia agreed silently and, although she was very tired, followed Noah. Their swords and magic fell like a rain, but a turtle with an indiscriminate rage went forward, destroying everything in their path. Alexia could not look at it. She thanked the brave people for their self-sacrifice. Hildendand fell silent for a moment, thinking. In his head, it was believed that Claudia could not remain indifferent to Noah after that urgent mission. Perhaps she already perceives it not just as a magician. The next day, Noah, Fafnir, and Alexia were already standing near the tent, completely prepared for battle. The warriors were the first to be in place, ready to meet the danger that was approaching. The knights of the Rastian army raised their shields and stood in combat line. They were completely ready for battle. An emergency operation began, which was called Battle of Sleep Turtles. Gathering with forces, she climbed into the sky and released a wave of magic, covering the soldiers with a bright protective barrier. Meanwhile, in the outskirts of the capital in a temporary shelter, women were closely monitored by the children who were hiding with them. Anxiety and tension were felt in the air. The little girl came to her mother and asked quietly whether the bad monster really wanted to destroy their home. Mom smiled gently and reassured her daughter, promising that the soldiers of Rastia, the strongest in the whole kingdom, would definitely protect them. The protective field firmly reflected a deadly blow. The turtle was angry and tried to break through it, but the sphere stood adamant. Fierce fights have already erupted on the battlefield. The warriors immediately opened a powerful fire in the direction of sleep of the turtle without hesitation. The shells flew into the giant body of the creature one by one, but almost did not harm him. A strong shell reliably protected him from all attacks. Fafnir rose, threateningly exclaiming that the warriors retreat back. He raised his weapon and strengthened magical protection. Combining the power of the dragon and the ancient runes of Alexia, the warriors were able to stop the monster on the moment, letting the defenders rest. Hearing that the situation is changing, Noah prepared his spell. In his eyes, the purple flames of ancient magic were inflamed. Noah warned everyone, the turtle is rapidly approaching. There is very little time left. Without hesitation, Alexia ordered the adventurers loudly to retreat to the spare line. Noah stood away and did not take his eyes off the monster. Anger and pain were boiling inside. She suddenly realized that it was the sleepy turtle that took her father's life, and hundreds of other people. The storm winds were increasingly twisted, gaining force along with a storm that broke out of the depths of his soul. Going through a heavy wind and rain, Noah shouted that it was because of this creature that Alexia remained alone and without protection. The commander, watching the disaster, quietly in pain, said it was probably the end. Near him, the soldier barely heard, muffled by the hum of destruction. In his palms appeared a storm blade, a special technique that can turn the wind into a sharp, like a blade, weapons. The warriors rushed forward, thinking only about their homes and loved ones, and without sorry for themselves. He struck the creature's armor, hoping to move it a little. Tornado raged, covering the monster, and Noah watched how the storm became increasingly stronger. The shell continued to remain holistic and brilliant. Fafnir looked at him with surprise, and Alexia noticed that the beast was completely hidden inside, waiting for the blow. The turtle strongly put forward her huge head, feeling neither fear nor pain, and was prepared to strike. The noise charges hit the Alexia barrier, but the protective shield withstood. Noah realized that this shell not just absorbs magic, but also turns it back with incredible force. Remembering the peace, an ancient source of magical power, Noah realized that in order to overcome the enemy, one should change the rules of the battle. Otherwise, it is impossible to defeat this creature. Noah quickly looked around, saw Alexia and Fafnir look at him, and realized, without their auxiliary maneuver, his bold idea would not work. But when he embodies his plan, for a moment he feels the complete loss of forces. His body will not withstand such tension. Nobody knows about this weakness. Noah warned everyone. The turtle is rapidly approaching. There is very little time left. In the eyes of friends, unwavering determination lit up, and together they firmly promised that they could be fully relied on them. Noah thanked, but it was at this point that all suddenly changed. A strong wave of magic pierced him from his back. Noah stood away and did not take his eyes off the monster. Anger and pain were boiling inside. He never understood where the blow came from, and his body was pulling, and in his ears lost from the loud explosion that threw it forward. She suddenly realized that it was the sleepy turtle that took her father's life and hundreds of other people. From a powerful magical explosion, Noah threw up, but he gathered all his forces, did not lose consciousness, and loudly assured his friends that everything was well with him. The storm winds were increasingly twisted, gaining force along with a storm that broke out of the depths of his soul. Gathering with the spirit, he ordered Alexia and Fafnir to focus all attacks on the turtle, so as not to give it an advantage. Going through a heavy wind and rain, Noah shouted that it was because of this creature that Alexia remained alone, and without protection. Noah suddenly stopped and turned sharply, feeling something wrong. Anxiety was barely noticeable in the air, as if an invisible danger. He was in front of Hildendand Aldheim, his father, whose eyes glowed with rage and disgust. In the hands of Hildegand, a ruthless flame raged, and his cold voice was forming a terrible, as if he had already determined the fate of his son. A moment later, the father noticed on the back of Noah's ancient protective cloak. It was an artifact from the distant past, not at all like modern magic. The shell continued to remain holistic and brilliant. Fafnir looked at him with surprise, and Alexia noticed that the beast was completely hidden inside, waiting for the blow. Hildeganda's face became even harsh. Without hesitation, he created a fiery whip from the flame and threw it directly on Noah. The burning fallow deer went into the air, but Noah quickly released a powerful wave of water that dispelled the flames before it was able to touch it. The noise charges hit the Alexia barrier, but the protective shield withstood. Noah realized that this shell not just absorbs magic, but also turns it back with incredible force. He appealed to his father, asking to stop the altercation, because now, when the city is on the verge of death, it is necessary to act together. But Hildendand was not exposed to persuasion and remained adamant, remembering the peace, an ancient source of magical power. Noah realized that in order to overcome the enemy, one should change the rules of the battle. Otherwise, it is impossible to defeat this creature. He is a disgusting smile that neither the city nor the turtle is not important for him. The main thing for him is to pick up his son, even if it is too expensive. Noah answered the fire flash, but his father immediately lifted the icy wall of the fourth circle and stopped his attack. Realizing that Hildendand effortlessly coped with the strong combinations of the elements, Noah decided that you need to find another way to win. Having collected all his strength, he concentrated magic in one powerful volley and tried at least for a moment to break through the imperfect protection of his father. The blow broke through the icy barrier. Sparks were scattered around. A decisive battle between his father and her son flashed with even greater force. The father, angry to the edge, ordered the fire to tear out. He used the spell of the 6th level, and it seemed that the air was about to break. From a powerful magical explosion, Noah threw up, but he gathered all his forces, did not lose consciousness, and loudly assured his friends that everything was well with him. The air was fried, and magic streamlined around the waves. Hildendand raised his hand, and the meteor of the bench escaped from his palm. The burning layer flew right on Noah. Their eyes met. Despite the devastating power of witchcraft, Noah remained calm and did not look. From a strong blow, the earth shook, and a large crater appeared on it. However, the clubs of smoke quietly emerged from Noah. It remained adamant. Hildendand himself appeared from the ashes clubs, laughing. He smiled, saying that the worthless talent was able to match the most prominent magician of his day. Smiling, he said that the real misfortune is that this power would not get the kind of Aldheim, and even worse if everyone learns the truth about the expulsion of Noah. In his voice there was a quiet threat. In order to keep the title, he is ready to do everything, even sacrifice his son's life. Hildendand broke out of his mantle and announced the last battle. Either Noah would obey or will no longer be. Noah said calmly that he would not go back and would not allow himself to be killed. He appealed to his father, asking to stop the altercation, because now, when the city is on the verge of death, it is necessary to act together. But Hildendand was not exposed to persuasion and remained adamant. Although he did not want to fight with his own father, there was nowhere to retreat. This meeting became fateful and inevitable. Noah looked Hildendand directly into his eyes. His courage and confidence were so struck by Hildendand that he was even lost. The father did not restrain his anger and exclaimed, stunned that his son dared to go against his will. Having collected all his strength, he concentrated magic in one powerful volley and tried at least for a moment to break through the imperfect protection of his father. At the same moment, he disappeared from his eyes. Lightning teleportation completely puzzled Hildegand. When he realized that his son had spatial magic, he exploded from rage and shouted, "I will not let you run away!" "I don't run away," said the voice behind. Hildendand wanted to turn around, but did not have time. Noah was already in front of him. He gathered all his strength and lifted his fist filled with ancient energy. With all his strength, he struck a devastating blow directly into his father's chest, once and for all deciding the result of their fierce duel. Hildendand got a strong blow to the chest, fell to the ground and hoggled, coughing. Noah stood above him, and his father, offended by pain, still tried to smile. The son asked sharply, until he still lives the past. If he does not stop now, he would only have to answer for him. Hildendand, all trembling, rose to his knees and crooked. Can you really kill your own father? But in the look of Noah, there was a firm and unbreakable determination. In his hand, a thin strip of light flashed, and before Gildend, a black void dissolved, taking away the last crumbs of magic. The parental body fell and lay a heavy fixed burden on a cracked land. Noah stood in silence, not showing any feelings, and then quietly bowed his head and slowly walked away. He mutilated his nose quietly. Once upon a time, everything would work, but in his voice there was a bitter irony. At this time, Alexia continued to keep a sleepy turtle under control, its protective barrier to trembles and flicker from tension. Fafnir flew high above the ground and produced fire rays directly into the face of a huge monster. The dragon noticed that the girl was tired and suggested that she pause. But Alexia confidently said that she would withstand and not going to give up. When the tension reached its peak, they suddenly approached a figure. Both turned their heads right away. Noah stood in front of them. He calmly apologized for his late, as if it were important during the battle. After casting a quick look at the battlefield, he suggested that he join efforts to finally defeat the monster. Alexia shuddered and looked at Noah, and then asked her father carefully. For a moment there was a tense silence between them. Noah smiled a little and said quietly, "I have no father anymore." His words were strictly, almost like a sentence. Tears appeared in the girl's eyes. Fafnir did not bring his eyes off the turtle and warned others. The monster was about to attack again. Noah raised his hands instantly. His barrier became a strong wall and stopped a powerful turtle blow. One protection was not enough. Looking at his comrades, he asked them to distract the monster. He needed time to solve how to break a strong shell. Alexia and Fafnir immediately nodded each other, gathering with their forces. They prepared to take a blow until a thick, caustic smoke was bubbling from the huge turtle. In her metal eyes, a sinister shine was already shining, which promised another wave of danger. Noah rushed to the giant shell rapidly, shouting to his friends on the move, who relied on their support. In his confident voice, there was a slight anxiety. He realized that it is possible to change the situation only when you come very close, so he decided to step directly on the shell, even if it threatens his life. Alexia, amazed at a dangerous maneuver, exclaimed that it was a true madness. But when she saw with what confidence he was acting, she strongly said she would fly behind him. In her eyes, sparks of determination were shown. She flew into the sky after Noah, and Fafnir understood. Now his time to distract the monster on herself. The dragon did not retreat, though he knew about the danger. He gritted his teeth and thought that monsters were often used as an obedient weapon for his vicious business. Fafnir smiled ominously and began to shout at the turtle, distracting her attention. Meanwhile, Noah landed directly on her shell and clearly felt under his feet pulsating magic that came from the creature. Alexia remained behind, as if invisible support. Noah said he had to cope with himself, but she shook her head in silence. He stopped, closed his eyes and focused, absorbing energy that filled the air around. And at this time in the girl's head did not stop spinning the terrible truth about the death of her father. Alexia did not believe that Noah actually killed her father. While she tried to understand this, Noah flipped away the Book of Peace in search of a way to change the rules of battle. When Noah realized that their success depends on this book, he gathered all his determination. It seemed that the world itself pushed him forward, helping to approach the victory. At the headquarters, June followed the map carefully. The officer quickly reported that the second line of defense was about to fall, and the situation was getting worse. But when extremely strong adventurers appeared, the turtle stopped moving so quickly, and everyone got at least a little time to rest. Yun realized that it was a detachment of Noah. She ordered her soldiers to help adventurers and quickly handed over this order to the chain. She gathered all the strength, placed the strongest fighters in important places, and reminded everyone not to forget about magical weapons. Now every decision could determine the future of the capital. Meanwhile, Noah seemed to hang in the void. He flipped through the pages, holding his fingers on ancient symbols, and gradually began to translate their content. Each page opened unknown symbols that were not met in any ancient manuscript before. He realized that this is a special protection code, even more complicated than the one that was in Sentinel B. However, the essence remained unchanged. Noah almost machine used his gift of decryption. The lines were revealed before him, so he smiled with relief. The task was simpler than he expected. Within a few seconds, the code broke out, and a new page appeared on the screen that opened secret data on the shell's vulnerability. Upon learning of the turtle's shell, he immediately shared this knowledge with Alexia and Fafnir so that they could strike a decisive blow. As soon as Noah finished changing the book, nothing happened. He had already begun to doubt whether everything was done correctly, as suddenly the cover was sharply slammed by itself. In the air, there were dozens of books that hung in space without a single shadow, as if they were frozen around and closed their entire horizons. Noah realized that he had to rewrite not only one volume, but all this library of wisdom. And at the same time in his heart there was not even a shadow of fear. He took the nearest book and confidently plunged into work, as if he had been again in the ancient times when he spent many hours in the library for another child. Once he studied carefully, reading ancient books page by page, and now, in the most difficult period of his life, he absorbed that knowledge even more diligent than before. Noah solved the new code. The runes began to disappear right before his eyes, but he almost did not feel the time passing and not even tired. One book by another opened his secrets to him, and he himself did not notice how used to solving different puzzles. It was already a common thing for him. Each subsequent page closer to the goal, to the key that will help to break through the protection of the monster. Fafnir was still circling right in front of the shell without bringing his eyes off the turtle. She slowly pulled his paw forward, trying to get and grasp it. The next moment, a huge claw tightly grabbed the dragon. Though he tried to evade, he still got into the strong paws of the enemy. The monster kept the prisoners firmly, but Fafnir, despite the surprise because of the power of his opponent, continued to fight, trying to escape to freedom. Suddenly, a roar of guns came from below. The nucleus was hit by a turtle shell, and even from the impact, even the wings of the dragon shook from vibration. Adventurers quickly reloaded guns. The commander ordered to target in an unprotected place and collect all the fire at one point. Fafnir could not understand. The same people with whom he once was enemies now desperately saved his life, and he was amazed at their coordinated work. The magic squeezed inside the dragon. The people of the earth directed a powerful stream of power directly to his horns, multiplying his own energy. One of the magicians exclaimed that although he does not know who this girl with horns is, but still puts her last hope on her. Colleagues immediately supported her and sent her energy with her. Fafnir felt unprecedented power, one that he did not even think of dreaming. Now those who were his enemies yesterday united with him and sent their magical forces together for joint protection. Feeling support, he gathered all the strength and looked strongly at the turtle, as if challenging her. Now, she will no longer dare to despise him. The dragon realized that he had been doubting too long. When it was stabbed, it became softer, but now this weakness has disappeared. Fafnir straightened his wings covered with a bright new mana. Now he was ready to take revenge on his enemy. This time his heart knew neither pity nor hesitation. Fafnir realized that no time for reflection remained. At the same moment, incredible energy broke out from the inside, and the turtle fist began to swell, cracking from excess power. It was a real miracle. Everyone looked at the dragon, without even trying to look. Fafnir silently apologized to Noah because he was well aware. His strength is now very necessary for friends. His mighty roar cut the sky as he escaped from the monster's paws, and again gained a formidable dragon. Adventurers realized that they were faced with the legendary Fafnir. He shouted loudly at the monster, warning, if he did not stop, he would be sure to regret that he was born at all. In the next moment, sharp claws rode into the shell, and the blazing flames swept a huge body. The commander at the bottom quickly ordered to cover the dragon. The detachment agreed instantly and opened fire in the most vulnerable places. Fafnir grabbed the turtle firmly. His fire burned it, and shouted at unbearable pain, mad in his suffering. At the shell of Noah and Alexia silently watched the brutal battle. They understood well. Every moment could be crucial for life. At heart, Noah prayed softly so that Fafnir could stand until the end, and did not obey until the reality census was completed. Alexia felt a powerful stream of mana, which streams through Noah. It seemed that he actually changed the book of the world. That manuscript is the greatest creation of the people of the runes. It can change the nature of the world. The girl could not believe that such great power was now in the hands of a stranger. But her reflection suddenly interrupted a terrible manifestation. In the air, a shadow of the spirit of darkness appeared. Its silhouette was rapidly over everything like an inevitable punishment. Seeing Alexia, the spirit immediately recognized her. He was convinced that during the last war he destroyed her whole people. The girl finally realized, this darkness is the cause of most of the misfortunes that happened around. The shadow gripped closer, preparing to attack, but Alexia remained unmoved and calm. The spirit roared loudly and rushed forward, but she did not get lost. He decisively lifted her leg and confidently reflected his attack. With an unexpected rage in her eyes, she rushed forward, fully determined to protect Noah from ancient darkness. The dark spirit appeared again and said that no one would take advantage of the power of the book, and Noah would die here. But Alexia did not retreat. She stood before the spirit, closing Noah with her body, and was ready to take a blow on herself. There was nowhere to retreat. Alexia had to stand, as if an unwavering rock. Realizing that she was gone any other choice, she firmly decided that neither now nor would Noah die. Seeing her determination, the spirit of darkness was abusive that the people of the runes did not learn the lessons of the past again and condemn himself to death. He threatened Alexia that she would be destroyed forever, and then rushed forward, releasing black tentacles that could even break the fabric of space. The girl made her best and repelled the dark gust so powerful that the air around the explosion. But suddenly a new pair of tentacles appeared which rapidly reached for Noah. Alexia immediately rushed forward and stopped them right near his face. The spirit with a mockery whispered that it is dangerous for his mortal shadows. As soon as she touched her, the darkness began to burn her skin. The black shoots wrapped their hands like living snakes trying to swallow all the light around. She prayed only for one thing, that Noah would have enough time to finish his plan, and patiently withstand the pain without releasing the tentacle. Meanwhile, Fafnir, not paying attention to fatigue, continued to breathe fire directly into the face of the turtle, forcing her to roll out of pain. The warriors on the ground lifted their heads and could not believe their eyes. The legendary dragon, which legends went, now fought with them. Noah stood among books floating in the air, and in his hands gradually appeared a force that could change the whole world. Every time I rewrote the next line, I felt the forces filling my body and understood. The moment of great victory was very close. A whole company of adventure seekers has already gathered around him, and each of them has a special story. Siegfried, known as the legendary winner of the dragons, calmly followed all around. Even the most nasty monsters were afraid of his gaze. Nearby was Lawrence, Archimag, whose glory of strength and wisdom went far beyond the magic world. But Noah's gaze also stopped at another person, the elves named Nissa, whom everyone knew under the nickname Miss A. It was the embodiment of restraint, proud luck, and experienced tamer. She calmly said that she was not worried about what was happening in the capital. Her words sounded too boldly, especially next to the wolf familiar Fenrir, who immediately warned not to speak so aloud. Nissa is a seer of Adventure S, which, thanks to her own efforts and her faithful beast, rose to the top. Her guild of Thames was known to the entire Islydian arc. Serena, another Arand adventurer, felt a strong desire not to disgrace the legendary people among this. She imagined how Noah and his friends were already fighting on the front line. Serena looked with concern in the direction of the headquarters, where Yoon coordinated the course of surgery with dedication. She worked tirelessly, realizing that the future of the whole kingdom depends on her efforts. At this time, June saw Princess Claudia and immediately hurried to her. Her heart was filled with a sense of great responsibility. Claudia sincerely thanked Yoon for his wonderful leadership, but June only took a look, not considering herself worthy of such praise. The worried princess confessed that the sleepy turtle almost reached the last limit. Yoon immediately suggested that everyone evacuate if the situation is quite bad. Claudia decided not to flee because she believed that her place near the people. The soldiers fought for the kingdom, and she wanted to stay with the subjects. She straightened and said confidently that as a representative of the king could not afford to weaken the morale of the army. Yoon was on the verge of tears from excitement, but Claudia whispered calmly that they would definitely defeat, and even a powerful turtle would be overcome. One of the guards said that the heart of the princess would remain adamant even before the powerful roar of the dragon, and promised to stand next to her until the very end. Claudia thanked, but in her eyes there was still anxiety for Hildegonda, who went to the front. Meanwhile, the battle became more and more fierce. The smoke tightened the whole sky, and the sun almost disappeared from the eyes. The cannon shots did not die down for a moment, and everything around the roar of the explosions was absorbed. The Gildan stretched on the field. His clothes were torn, and the whole body was covered with a layer of dust. The two guards ran out and shouted loudly that they were able to find their commander. The doctor rushed to him and began to shake, trying to bring him. After evaluating the situation, he ordered a messenger to be sent to the winged dragon so that he would deliver the help as soon as possible. Suddenly, Gildan died down, quietly moved and slowly opened his eyes. He looked around and asked where he was now. The doctor exhaled with ease, sincerely thanked the fate and quickly began to give medicine. He said that while trying to stop the turtle, the commander was seriously injured. Hildendan nodded. remembering the battle. The doctor assured him that the wound was not dangerous and that he was fainted for only a few seconds. Hildendand stood up and apologized for the inconvenience, but the doctor just smiled and said that it was a trifle compared to Hildendand helped in defense. Hildendand, still stunned by all that has happened, suddenly felt that something very important was slipping out of his memory. Memories gradually melted, leaving only anxious cold in the heart. At the touch, he felt the clover amulet, and when he touched him, the mysterious runes on the metal suddenly shone with red light. Suddenly, his head had pierced acute pain, as if someone had broken the castle that held his memories. However, he did not even have time to understand what he remembers. The pain was not too strong, but she was constantly annoying, as if someone was reminded of a promise that I never fulfilled. He felt that this mascot was important and belonging to a loved one, but could not remember her name. It seemed to be lost in memory. When asked by a doctor about his well-being, he clenches his teeth and quietly says, "The head splits," but he still refused to rest. It is time to rush again. And despite the objections of protection, he sat on a winged dragon. Infamous determination to go directly to the front without delay. The dragon has already picked up the commander and his nose directly to the terrible turtle, and the guards below could not interfere with it. Hildendand looked carefully at the dark shell of a monster, from which an incredible mana escaped. Magical whirlwinds that roared like a thunder were able to crush the earth were rushed from its surface. Meanwhile, Alexia, barely holding back fatigue, continued to fight desperately with the spirit of darkness. With every new attack, the enemy became stronger, and its protection crumbled under the blows of dark lightnings. She did not stop for a moment. She confidently reflected every blow, not allowing herself to fall. However, the forces disappeared. The protective barrier around Noah swung and gradually weakened. Finally, the strongest blow destroyed the protection. The sphere has crackled, and Alexia screamed. The spirit was fierce. He was about to erase the people of the runes from the face of the earth, once and for all. Hildendand noticed it in the sky, and in his heart one thought was instantly erupted: to destroy the evil that hammed over the girl. Spring, he raised the light of the seventh circle, in his hands from the pure, bright energy, a bow that shone as much as dawn itself. The shining arrow, which gathered all the power of light, pierced the turtle's shell with a bright ray, so easily tearing its protection, as if it were a thin web. At the same moment, the spirit of darkness disappeared, dispelled in the air like smoke after a storm, and did not leave any sign. Hildendand quickly approached the exhausted Alexia and asked with excitement whether nothing had happened to it. In response, she, stunned, recognized Noah's father. When Hildendand recalled that they had already seen in the palace, in her eyes, an understanding appeared. Noah was not those who killed her father. He reproached her for risking, promising that he would finish this fight. But Alexia saw that now she was no longer the cruel magician he once was. He used to be cruel and cold, and now seemed more gentle, full of doubts and fight against himself. She saw in her understanding, Hildendand no longer treats Noah as before. His attitude is already forever. So she decided that it was best for them to act together and combine their hand to protect Noah. Only through joint efforts can they overcome darkness. When the magician heard about his son, his eyes expanded in surprise, as if he had heard the name for the first time. This greatly frightened Alexia. He showed Noah standing behind the girl and asked, "Is that the one you said?" She was amazed and could not believe that Hildendand had forgotten about her son. On her question, he reacted painfully, saying that it simply could not be. Alexia remembered how Noah said to her, "I have no father anymore." Then she realized that he, with the help of magic, removed all his father's memories of himself. At that moment, a dark shadow appeared again, laughing at their vain effort. Hildendand realized that even the seventh circle of light could not overcome the enemy. It seemed incredible. Alexia said that it was this spirit that called the sleepy turtle, and was guilty of all the misery that happened. In her voice, he felt sorry for Noah. The shining arrow, which gathered all the power of light, pierced the turtle's shell with a bright ray, so easily tearing its protection, as if it were a thin web. Hildendand, though he did not understand what it was, but saw in the girl's eyes a true confidence. So he only nodded and said, "I will be on your side if you want it." Alexia thanked, although she still had pain in her soul. She understood that the lost memories did not return. But despite this, we should continue to fight. The spirit of darkness, powerful and terrible, pierced that the number of enemies is not important. Darkness absorbs any power. Hildendand lit his palms with a bright flame and stood before Noah. He felt in the darkness he returned to him and the courage that his father once was proud of. In the very center of battle, where the flames and the magic merged into the restless vortex. In the soul of Hildeganda again and again one name floated: Noah, as if he knew him all his life. He tried in vain to remember where he had already heard this name, and why this young face seemed a strange acquaintance to him, as if his memory was trying to break through a thick fog. Every thought was lost in the darkness of oblivion, but the feeling of a friend did not disappear, as if it were necessary in memory, hidden behind the invisible veil of magic. Hearing Alexia shouts, "To protect Noah!" Swing. The magician immediately came to mind. He focused, gathered all his courage, and prepared for a decisive battle. He raised the wall of fire, which simultaneously became his sword and a shield. With this flame, he stopped the black arrows of the spirit, turning his fire in the curtain of dangerous sparks. He defended himself, and felt the power of Noah, like a river, into a turtle shield, but could not break through the invisible obstacles. Hildegand realized that if you pick up the protective seals, the guy may break from his own strength before the enemy's weapon will do. Suddenly, a dark shadow emerged from the back of Noah. The spirit of darkness rushed to him rapidly, and a black sword shined in his hand. The blade pierced only a fiery ghost, which in an instant flashed and disappeared. It was an illusion of a third circle created by a magician to win a few drag value seconds. Alexia said that it was this spirit that called the sleepy turtle, and was guilty of all the misery that happened. In her voice, he felt sorry for Noah. The darkness in February attacked again, but only grabbed the shadow, because the real warriors have already changed their place. The magician laughed in full voice and asked how many more strokes would fly past him. With every moment, he felt more and more. The angry spirit broke through the fire obstacle, destroying all the illusory figures, but the real three heroes were able to go further, winning a few valuable minutes. Hildegand was satisfied with the whisper that the trap had worked, but when he looked at Noah, he noticed that he was incredibly exhausted. It was as dangerous as a crack in an icy dam. Alexia has already been going to give a little of her mana, but the magician stopped her instantly. She is barely standing on her feet and can go out like a candle in a strong wind. At the same moment, he decided, will share with his son part of his strength, even if he has to pay a big price for it. He has no doubt, only confidence in his decision. He tried in vain to remember where he had already heard this name, and why this young face seemed a strange acquaintance to him, as if his memory was trying to break through a thick fog. Every thought was lost in the darkness of oblivion, but the feeling of a friend did not disappear, as if it were necessary in memory, hidden behind the invisible veil of magic. Alexia nodded silently, holding a sword with shining runes in her hands. In her gaze, her determination was red. She was ready to fight for those she loved, even if she was injured. Light, flames, and faith merged into one. Before the decisive confrontation, all three stood together, ready to meet darkness without fear. Hildegand looked at Noah. A spark of surprise flashed in his eyes. The movements of the boy and his mana were some acquaintances, as if they were reminiscent of something from the past. In this stream of magic, he suddenly felt familiar notes, just like in the magic of his wife Rainey. It could not be simple accident. The shrill pain went through the head, and for a moment everything around disappeared, plunging into the darkness. He turned away, because he feared that strong feelings would prevent him from staying in a decisive moment. But the memories of the Rhine returned with renewed vigor. He took a medallion with her photo and saw her smiling face, so bright and living as if she was nearby. In her memory, a day appeared when she came up and woke him up. He fell asleep directly at the desk, leaning over the treatise of magic. She said with a smile that he was so fond of her grimoire that she even forgets to take care of herself. She warned that their future child would also love to fall asleep among books, so he should learn how to relax next to his baby. Then he just laughed and promised that he would be more careful. They met at the Royal Academy of Magic. The Rhine was an ordinary girl, but thanks to her perseverance and diligent work, she was able to bypass even the aristocratic Hildeganda and become the best among all. Initially, their relationship was reminiscent of a continuous competition. Aristocratic pride faced the firm independence of luck. Each quarrel made their relationship even stronger, as if there were even more respect and understanding between them. Over time, their quarrels have changed. More and more space occupied real feelings that they could no longer hide. Despite the resistance from the family and difficult circumstances, young lovers were able to protect their love and get involved. The marriage was also difficult. Different origin remained between them, but they persistently proved to each other that their love is real. One day, Rhine, carrying out the books of books, wondered what it was to volumes. In response, He explained that they were grimoire from a fire and icy school. The descendants of the Aldeheim kind need to master the main elements, although this is not enough to become a real master. She smiled and wondered if he was already thinking about the name for their baby. Usually, a serious Gildanda was a little discord and confessed that he had not yet chosen. But in the near future, she plans to start search. He really started looking for a solution for a boy and a girl. But when he went to the rain, he did not suspect that his life would change forever soon. When Hildenden went into the room, he immediately petrified the horror. The Rhine lay on the floor and her body became weaker. She said with a smile that he was so fond of her Grimari that she even forgets to take care of herself. The face of the magician. He knew that his wife was weak, but did not even imagine that she could be so defenseless. He understood that at any moment their common story could be broken. It hurt the heart. But he did not allow the fear of taking a mountain. Hildendend barely restrained tears and quietly asked the Rhine not to waste power. He reassured her, they say, everything will be good. Doctors will do everything possible and even more. Initially, their relationship was reminiscent of a continuous competition. Aristocratic pride faced the firm independence of luck. The Rhine was tired, but smiled sincerely and said it was a good name. At the same moment, a ray of hope was inflamed in his heart. Then, barely audible whispering, she confessed that she was most afraid to ever look with her own son. These words pierced the magician through, like an icy knife. He shouted loudly by her name, full of despair, and Rhine only whispered quietly for all the worries he loved. The marriage was also difficult. Different origin remained between them, but they persistently proved to each other that their love is real. In the eyes of the Rhine, exhausted and tired, there was still a gentle light. Tears rolled through the cheeks, and she whispered quietly in response to the word of love. The magician bowed to her hand, firmly pressing her to her breasts and trying to keep at least a little warm. Soon only a baby was crying in the room. For Hildegund, his world broke up in his eyes. His dreams of life with the Rhine disappeared, as if they were not. But she left him the most expensive, their son. Noah breathed quietly, and his father leaned over his mother, and tears fell on her peaceful face. The pain of the loss clarified him with his soul. He promised himself to become a better parent than once was a man to honor the Reina's memory. Looking at the infant, Gildenden froze with surprise. In this young child, incredible magical energy raged. The magician felt that transparent streams of pure mana wrapped him so that he had taken his breath from admiration. He has never seen the magician with so equal and harmonious meridians. Nature really created a miracle, but even the joy was overshadowed by the heavy thought. The Rhine gave her life to the world to be born this special boy. Hildendend looked carefully at Noah and trembled. At that moment, he realized that he was never for his son the father he had so hoped for. And he realized how unfairly accused the child of the death of the Rhine. The Rhine was tired, but smiled sincerely and said it was a good name. At the same moment, a ray of hope was inflamed in his heart. Then, barely audible whispering, she confessed that she was most afraid to ever look with her own son. These words pierced the magician through, like an icy knife. Passing Noah's energy, he watched with surprise how the guy became stronger every moment, as if filled with the flames of heaven. Hildendend held her hand firmly, confessing again and again in her love. However, even his sincere words seemed helpless when death was nearby. He remembered how he moved away from Noah and closed in his own suffering, and realized that all the pain he caused his son now returned to him. The magician bowed to her hand, firmly pressing her to her breasts and trying to keep at least a little warm. The tears washed away from his face the usual harshness. Through the sobbing, he confessed that he had destroyed his son's future and forgive it too late. The abusive words he once humiliated the boy returned to him with sharp fragments of memories. Every outbreak of memory pain is stronger than a sword, but there was no time to be atonement. The spirit of darkness thundered in the sky, announcing loudly that he had revealed their vulnerable truth. Alexia rushed forward, although she had almost no forces. She ordered Gildenda to flee with Noah, even though he was still in doubt in his eyes. He asked what was waiting for her, but the girl firmly answered, "Save her son, don't even look back." In her voice, there was an unwavering determination. The magician quickly grabbed Noah and rushed to flee, and behind the mocking voice of the spirit, he said that the fate of the runes had long been resolved. Alexia unfolded the wings that glowed with runic light, and became on the path of darkness, protecting friends and giving them the opportunity to escape. She loudly stated that she would never seem, even if there is only an abyss ahead. After that, gathering her courage, she first rushed into battle. teaching to the remains to cut the darkness. Hildendand, holding Noah in his arms, felt his heart full of pain and guilt. But he was determined. He had to save his son at any cost. 5 years have passed before they saw again, and during this time the young Noah managed to reveal such unusual talents that everyone was surprised by his abilities. The girl rose quickly, grabbed the black blade and threw away the darkness, as if protecting the last border between evil and hope. The spirit sadly spoke of the inevitable destruction, but Alexia confidently assured that even the ashes of their people would become a spark for a new struggle. Far ahead of Hildendand looked over his shoulder. In the glow of the protective barrier, the figure of Alexia remained unmoved. He hugged Noah firmly and promised himself in his soul he would never betray his relatives again. Hildendand suddenly stopped, realizing that while he fled, Alexia remained alone and fought desperately with the enemy. He was ashamed, and this shame seemed to lay on his heart. He moved Noah to a safe place, then sat down and wondered how everything could go so far. The despair squeezed the heart. Life was destroyed, and it was very difficult to look into his son's eyes. Every memory hurt. He remembered all those moments when he suppressed the boy's desire, thinking that he was so concerned. But now he understood. The apology is not enough. A timid thought flashed in her head. What about just to disappear and never to hurt Noah again? Alexia rushed forward, although she had almost no forces. She ordered Gildenda to flee with Noah, even though he was still in doubt in his eyes. He promised the girl a pardon if she handed Noah, but in response, she exclaimed, "Never!" The darkness smiled abruptly, certain that the runes would not change the fate of the turtle, and slowly pulled his black plume to the throat of Alexia. Alexia unfolded the wings that glowed with runic light, and became on the path of darkness, protecting friends and giving them the opportunity to escape. She loudly stated that she would never seem, even if there is only an abyss ahead. After that, gathering her courage, she first rushed into battle, teaching to the remains to cut the darkness. The spirit laughed and called him crazy, and Gildenden replied that he was creating a protective barrier for Noah. Alexia did not trust any words, because every second could cost her life. The darkness looked at the magician with contempt and was cold, that it was of no use. The spirit sadly spoke of the inevitable destruction, but Alexia confidently assured that even the ashes of their people would become a spark for a new struggle. He sighed heavily and quietly. That is enough. Now is business to love Noah and take care of him. The spirit suddenly shouted, and the magician rose to his feet, and the fire circled around him. He loudly stated, "I am still the most powerful magician of fire." His words were sounded loud as if hitting in gong. Even the darkness itself froze, feeling that something has changed. Hildendand became between Alexia and the darkness. His heart was burning with repentance and firm determination. He challenged, "Go if you can, now I will not retreat." The sparks illuminated the night when the old sinner first appeared in battle in his life, not against the enemy, but for the chance to purify his own heart. In the eyes of Hildegand, determination appeared when he set a spell that could destroy the darkness itself. The spirit of darkness laughed, and said that these words were just a miserable joke. The magician did not pay attention to his ridicule. He sincerely apologized to Noah and the Rhina, and in the meantime his hand was already glowing with the heat of magical energy. He gave up everything, both titles and glory. Instead, he turned to the flames who lived in his blood for centuries. Through the darkest corners of the universe, it released them. The spirit could not stand the heat and released Alexia. She got out of strength and fell to the ground. Her enemy only laughed. He did not believe that someone would allow the magician to bring his spell to the end. The black sword waved sharply in the air, but Gildendand, using the old illusion, moved to the side in time, and the sharp shadow walked again without touching it. When the magician saw that the enemy got into their trap again, he felt confidence in his abilities. The self-confidence of the dark side made the enemy defenseless. He dissolved in the flash of flames, and in a moment he was behind the spirit, causing the power of the ancient fire that burned since the creation of the world. A huge ball of energy suddenly broke out in his palms. It was the very essence of destructive fire. In his eyes, unwavering determination shone. In his hands, he held the nucleus firmly as if it were a light source capable of destroying everything around. It was a meteorite punishment, the highest magic of fire, the 10th and its last level. The spirit suddenly shouted, and the magician rose to his feet and the fire circled around him. He loudly stated, "I am still the most powerful magician of fire." The sphere broke the space and hit the spirit with incredible force, destroying it and everything that was near. Hildenden fell into his own flame and felt his forces quickly fade away, as if wax in the burning sun. He challenged, "Go if you can, now I will not retreat." The steps were slow. The magician began to sway, and Alexia quickly put his back so that he did not fall. Tired to the limit, he closed his eyes. The girl first turned to him, "Father," and called him Magic Majestic. After these words, he completely drowned and settled on the ground. Suddenly, a spooky wheezing came from the smoke clubs. This is the spirit of darkness, glittering in rage and contempt. He appeared to everyone in an even more horrible way, and confessed that for the first time in hundreds of years, he should show his true essence. The strong aura pressed on the ground under the feet of Alexia, as if the very reality shuddered from his power. He loudly stated that for 100 years, no one has forced him to go beyond the usual. But now everyone will find out how dark and endless his strength can be. The spirit of darkness, convinced of its power, with a giant pasha rapidly rushed to Alexia, saying that in a moment he would end their suffering. The girl opened her eyes wide. It seemed that the end was very close. A huge ball of energy suddenly broke out in his palms. It was the very essence of destructive fire. As soon as the spirit hung over Hildendand and Alexia, a bright lightning ray suddenly appeared and punched it directly into the chest. The ray of light lightly cut the black essence, tearing it into parts with impressive accuracy. Noah released a ray of light, and when his glow disappeared, he stepped forward, looking carefully at tired friends. The guy with a clear surprise asked if it was the same powerful spirit of darkness. Hildenden fell into his own flame and felt his forces quickly fade away, as if wax in the burning sun. The only thing I wanted was to apologize for all the mistakes and misdemeanors that remained in the past. He noticed that Hildenden was very tired, but decided not to ask anything, because now every moment was important. It was at this point that a crack occurred on the shell of the turtle. Noah said with confidence that he was probably a matter of his father's hands and magic. He advised everyone to retreat a little further to be safe. Full of determination, he picked up Hildehand on his shoulders and bounced away from the battlefield, preparing for the enemy's response. He appeared to everyone in an even more horrible way, and confessed that for the first time in hundreds of years, he should show his true essence. Yun was delighted to see how the ancient creature began to collapse. The warrior informed that although it was only a partial result, but that's what they achieved jointly. The commander realized that only Noah could handle the impossible. It was at this moment that Princess Claudia appeared nearby. Claudia looked confidently and said, "We will defeat now, or lose the chance forever." Yun nodded silently, feeling her heart beating like a drum. Lorenz, the main archimag of the royal court, appeared in the sky. He confidently held on his broom, spreading over everyone. Suddenly, a figure appeared from the darkness, which apologized her hand and said quietly that she was delaying. As soon as the spirit hung over Hildendand and Alexia, a bright lightning ray suddenly appeared and punched it directly into the chest. The ray of light lightly cut the black essence, tearing it into parts with impressive accuracy. This moment has become history. Experienced Magulans realize that such phenomena occur extremely rarely, and even his own skill cannot be compared to what Noah has done, conquering the great power of the element. Noah stood near Alexia, and an unconscious Gildand lay nearby. Meanwhile, a bright alarm suddenly broke out over the battlefield. Alexia learned that when Noah removed the perfect turtle protection, the enemy became vulnerable to magic. The girl felt a sudden relief, and Noah had already turned her gaze to her father. He noticed that Hildendand was very tired, but decided not to ask anything, because now every moment was important. It was at this point that a crack occurred on the shell of the turtle. Noah said with confidence that he was probably a matter of his father's hands and magic. He advised everyone to retreat a little further to be safe. The words were deeply affected by Noah. He is not ready to forgive right now, but he said that during his abrasion he saw strange fragments from his past. The turtle was raised loudly, and deep cracks went along its shell, and pieces of shells began to fall off under the pressure of magic. Noah realized that he was wrong in his ideas. The bitter precipitate melted, and instead appeared a calm sadness. The commander realized that only Noah could handle the impossible. It was at this moment that Princess Claudia appeared nearby. Claudia looked confidently and said, "We will defeat now or lose the chance forever." Yun nodded silently, feeling her heart beating like a drum. Meanwhile, the battle with a carotid turtle came into the most fierce stage. Fafnir was pouring on a monster of hot flames. The electrical sword went through the turtle's body, and Lorenz noticed with surprise that magic works quite differently. Surprisingly, now the turtle did not just stand the strokes, she sent them back twice as much, causing herself even more harm. This moment has become history. Experienced Magellans realized that such phenomena occur extremely rarely, and even his own skill cannot be compared to what Noah has done, conquering the great power of the element. Noah stood near Alexia, and an unconscious Gildan lay nearby. Meanwhile, a bright alarm suddenly broke out over the battlefield. After flying through the air, he gathered all his strength and hit the enemy's armor, flashing the flames. Every subsequent blow is more and more cracks the shell. Even such a strong turtle with its iron skin has already begun to lose strength. The adventurers from the bottom stood the amazed, without drawing her eyes and opening his mouths of surprise. But even in the very battle of Noah, he could not get rid of heavy memories of Hildegard. They would yard his heart. Nissa sat on the back of Fenrir and watched the giant creature closely. Inspired by what she saw, she leaned forward to look more conveniently, to look at the battlefield from the height of the wolf. Suddenly, the Elfian noticed on the neck of Fafnir a collar, and it was a lot of surprise. It turned out that this February, Wild Dragon actually belongs to someone as a regular pet. She showed Fenrir a collar with interest and asked if he knew this dragon. The wolf with passion recalled that he had once fought with him in the battle. Noah realized that he was wrong in his ideas. The bitter precipitate melted, and instead appeared a calm sadness. He was mentioned that at the most important moment, Hildegard shared with him his mana. Without it, he would not survive. Noah decided that after the battle he would definitely talk to his father, and may be able to return what he has lost. Noticing the wounds on Alexia's body, he insisted that she rests a little. The girl initially objected, but eventually only sighed and agreed, because it was really reasonable. Meanwhile, the battle with a carotid turtle came into the most fierce stage. Fafnir was pouring on a monster of hot flames. Shiny shackles, similar to iron snakes, in an instant wrapped their paws a monster and did not allow him to move. The turtle froze only for a moment, but within a second the chains began to creak again under her great force, as if calling for action. Seconds seemed endless. One protective ring flashed, then the other. Even the magic of the fire did not stop the beast. Nissa strongly rushed into battle. The Fafnir got out, rose from chicken, clenched his teeth and, despite the pain, flew into the sky again. After flying through the air, he gathered all his strength and hit the enemy's armor, flashing the flames. Other adventure seekers approached the elves and continued the offensive with it. Meanwhile, Elphias Nissa, known as Miss A, made her majestic families and was ready to join a decisive assault. With each new blow, the earth shuddered loudly. The monster roar was blown by air, and the cracks on the soil continued to spread. Suddenly, the Elfian noticed on the neck of Fafnir a collar, and it was a lot of surprise. It turned out that this February, Wild Dragon actually belongs to someone as a regular pet. The roar became more loud and sharper, and through the cracks it was already visible gentle, defenseless flesh. Fenrir came closer, and when their eyes met, his eyes lit up with a bright fire. Fafnir straightened his wings and, grunting, joked roughly, calling Fenrir a pretty dog. The wolf with irony called him toasted lizard and threatened to freeze. But Nissa quickly stopped their dispute and reminded that the battle was currently underway. The guns were not silent, but suddenly one of the adventurers noticed that the turtle protection began to crack. There was a great opportunity to strike a monster. Hearing the signal, the magicians immediately involved a chain seal created from light and Ranost. Shiny shackles, similar to iron snakes, in an instant wrapped their paws a monster and did not allow him to move. The turtle froze only for a moment, but within a second, the chains began to creak again under her great force, as if calling for action. Seconds seemed endless. One protective ring flashed, then the other. Even the magic of the fire did not stop the beast. Nissa strongly rushed into battle. Yun felt everything around rapidly changing every moment. She strongly pressed the button, agreeing with what happened next. Her insane stubbornness left only scratches on the monster, but she could not do real harm. The monster did not stop. Yun wondered. If they did not go to the ruins with Noah and did not meet Alexia, everything could have happened completely differently. They attacked the turtle again and again, like water that slowly erased the stone, gradually breaking its protection. With each new blow, the earth shuddered loudly. The monster roar was blown by air, and the cracks on the soil continued to spread. Fafnir and Fenrir, although they were extremely exhausted, did not think. They burned and frozen the armor of the enemy, trying to hold him back at least a little. The roar became more loud and sharper, and through the cracks it was already visible gentle, defenseless flesh. Yun, along with Claudia, stood away and watched how history was being made before their eyes. The world is changing right now. Yun inadvertently remembered. Once before the emergence of Rastia, there was a city-state. Now only memories remained from him, and it was on this earth that a new legend began again. Perkish was once a glorious center of power and culture that built the Run tribe, the rulers of these lands. The ruins themselves remained from the city, which still retain the weak mark of the past, although time and fierce storms have almost completely destroyed them. Yun, a little worried, quietly told Claudius that once in the center of the charming was a heavenly tower, which rose almost to the sky. In those days, the city flourished. At that moment, Yun held a starting device. His fingers slid the button by the button, and near the commanders in a hurry gave orders to their fighters to leave. The sleepy turtle was confidently breaking through the last border, bringing the battle to the final stage. Alexia watched from another flank carefully, and Yun felt a sincere gratitude for her support and faith in a joint plan. Yun felt everything around rapidly changing every moment. She strongly pressed the button, agreeing with what happened next. She returned to Claudia and said confidently that she had to retreat. The princess nodded in response, also remaining calm and decisive. Yun wondered, if they did not go to the ruins with Noah and did not meet Alexia, everything could have happened completely differently. She realized that all their lives are now closely linked, and every decision that was once made has led them to this point. It was these actions that saved the kingdom from death. Suddenly, a powerful explosion came under the tower. The earth trembled, and the air was protected as if the foundations of the world were cracking. Suddenly, the huge construction began to collapse and flew directly on the sleepy turtle. The tower fell faster and no one could stop it. It seemed impossible to avoid disaster. Huge stone slabs and pieces of steel fell on the giant body, and the whole fortress shook from a powerful explosion. Yun looked with Claudia with excitement, hoping that it would be enough to finally stop the battle. Suddenly, the turtle, hiding under the ground debris, loudly roared and straightened the paws. From her strength, the fragments flew all the way, as if they were light chips. Yun felt the earth suddenly protected under his feet. It was at this moment that Fafnir appeared nearby. Wasting time, he stated that he would take the problem, and flew into the sky rapidly, waving his big wings. When the dragon flew closer, it exhaled a powerful stream of flames that pierced the sky like a fiery pillar. The fiery ray suddenly crashed directly into the turtle's open mouth, illuminating all around the bright light, as if the earth itself had flashed from its burning flame. The mighty fire that escaped from the turtle's mouth knocked down all those nearby. The flames went out, and Fafnir was breathing hard, decreasing rapidly in size. He no longer had forces. He said quietly that he had reached the limit and began to fall down. Jun reacted instantly. She rushed forward and caught the dragon right on the fly. At that moment, the adventurer on the tower, looking into the spy pipe, suddenly exclaimed, "The sleepy turtle stopped and no longer moves?" The news of the victory quickly dispersed everywhere, and in the hearts of all the joy broke out. The warriors greeted each other as if the dangerous battle had already been behind. But the spirit of darkness did not want to give up. He is ignited by anger because people were able to win, and his turtle raised was defeated. He was angry more and more. He had at any cost to take the situation under his control and pay for the pain he had experienced. The spirit forced the turtle to give his body, and he began to dispose of him. Noah, Alexia, Yun, Claudia, and everyone else froze in surprise, watching how the beast stood up and moved towards the capital. A horrible sight appeared before her eyes. The turtle became even more scary, moving with extraordinary force, destroying everything in its path. Nothing could stop it. Yun did not believe what she saw. Among the adventure seekers, panic was raised. Everyone rushed to the side, trying to save their lives. Claudia immediately ordered all the soldiers to retreat, because the continuation of the battle only increased the destruction. She ordered the evacuation of the city because the consequences of what was happening could be a real catastrophe. Nissa was sitting on Fenrir's back and was watching anxiety with anxiety. If the monster goes even further, the Elfi settlement will be in great danger. Fenrir asked if they could protect their home. The Elfian has paved and barely audibly said that before such power, almost like a deity, they had very little chance of them. The turtle, all wounding with darkness, opened her mouth. From her mouth flowing streams of thick darkness, which rushed to the ground, destroying everything that happened on their way. Inside the beast, the spirit of darkness was pleased with the celebration, because human fear and despair only added strength to it. Its purpose is to cover the world with darkness until even the weakest light disappears. Now it seemed closer than ever. Fear swept them, but Noah did not stop with Alexia. They ran through the forest, and with every blow of a huge turtle, the earth trembled. Then Noah asked if the spirit of darkness really merged with the monster. Alexia, feeling pain, confirmed it. Suddenly, he was thought. It was necessary to attack earlier when the beast had not yet gained strength. But now time has already been lost. Noah stopped, tried to curb fear, and stubbornly reminded himself that it was not defeated. He remembered the power of the Book of Peace, which was able to show the weak place of his enemy. Gathering all his magical power, he closed his eyes, but when he opened them, there were no books. The heart was filled with anxiety, as if something very important slipped out of memory and was lost somewhere in the dark. Alexia turned to him gently, noticing his confusion. She has not yet fully understood what was going on, but already felt the power she wanted to take advantage of Noah was not really his own. Her voice shakes slightly. She said that Noah, although she has a connection with the book, is not a full member of the tribe, so his power has limits. In despair, he wondered whether there was an opportunity to strengthen his abilities, but Alexia only shook his head sadly. She herself did not answer this question. However, even the fact that Noah got the power of the book is already a real miracle. Different thoughts were spinning in his head, but he felt with his heart that the solution was already nearby. Without saying a word, he quietly turned and just left. Alexei ordered her to stay, and not to be in danger. Now he will have to meet the enemy without the magic of the book. Alexia called him, confused with this decision. She could not believe that he would cope on his own, but Noah remained firm in his intentions. He assured her that he would definitely return alive, and asked not to forget about their promise. In Alex, everything inside suddenly squeezed. Tears sparkled in the eyes. She remembered how her father once left and never returned. She was very afraid to lose someone important again. It was impossible to release Noah. At this point, he took advantage of his skill. His sword flew high into the sky. Alexia no longer doubted. She gathered her strength, rose into the air and found herself nearby. She felt the magic spilled inside her body. At this point, Noah looked around and met their views. She confidently stated that she knew how to make his magic stronger. When her father died, the throne of Kirkshish was left without a ruler. Princess from the tribe of Runes had the opportunity to give it Noah. She put her hand on his chest and decided for herself. This step was just needed. They have to get rid of, and then Noah will be able to become a king, having received true power over the Book of Peace. Without any reflection, Alexia was instantaneously acted. Kiss. At that moment, her heart came to life since childhood. Alexia remembered how the father said, "For the people of the Runes, it is the most valuable and special act that is made only for those who are really important." She whispered that she was asking for Noah Aldagim of eternal protection against her people. Alexia smiled and stepped back, and Noah stood silently, confused and puzzled. She asked for a surprise and said they decided to marry together. Noah froze, not immediately understanding how it changes everything around. Suddenly, a magical aura broke around him, and the whole body was filled with unusual force. Alexia said that Noah has now become a king of the tribe of Runes. At the same time, he was able to use the power of the Book of Peace unlimited. Standing in the heart of the storm, Noah felt his thoughts, emotions, and soul merged into one with ancient energy that envelops it. At the same moment, a Book of Peace appeared in front of them. Alexia confidently stated that now they would definitely overcome all obstacles. Noah looked at the manuscript confidently, as if for the first time he felt such power in himself. At this time, the turtle, surrounded by a lavish darkness, destroyed the capital. The spirit of darkness stood away and looked unmovingly as panic was growing in the city. He seemed to enjoy the anxiety of people who felt that the disaster was close. The next moment, he released a new wave of icy darkness, which began to absorb everything that happened on the way. On one of the towers, Noah unfolded a Book of Peace. His fingers moved slowly on the pages, reading the line by line, and he began to change the reality itself. It seemed that even nature itself listened to his order. The darkness that broke out of the monster's mouth suddenly changed her path and rejected to the side. The adventurers at the bottom saw a black stream that just seemed deadly, gradually dissipated and recedes from the streets. Without hesitation, Noah used mass healing. The warriors immediately felt that their wounds began to heal and the strength to return. He then used the spatial transfer and moved everyone to a safe place, away from the danger zone. The turtle, still covered with darkness, looked at the tower disdain. In her way, there was only Noah. At this crucial moment, they both felt, the final battle is inevitable, and now the whole future of the capital depends on the king in whose hands there is a Book of Peace. The voice of the spirit was heard from the darkness inside the turtle. He said sinisterly that he had not hoped that one of the runes would again call for the power of the Book of Peace. But, he said, if you just get rid of Noah, then all desirable power will be in his hands. Noah confidently replied that it would end the darkness and its tricks today. The spirit just smiled in response and challenged the guy to try to make the plan. Without a minute of reflection, Noah pulled out his bright light blade and strongly aimed at the very darkness. But he did not stop on one blow. He opened a Book of Peace, rewrite in it several lines, and the swords of light began to appear again and again. Bright blades, similar to the Star Army, rapidly rushed to a dark creature. The spirit smiled scornfully and laughed, saying that this attack was reminiscent of children's games that would never defeat real darkness. Directing his magic, he effortlessly reflected the flow of light. The bright blades were scattered around sparks without causing him any harm. Below, the adventurers and magicians were passionate about, and at the same time followed the sight. In the shimmer of Noah's swords, Noah looked a real miracle. Yun stared at close and recognized the silhouette that shone in the light. The ray became brighter, and the blood flowed from Noah's nose. The mana ended quickly, and the body became weaker. The spirit of darkness laughed loudly, saying that without true power, the Book of Peace is worth nothing. It is just a futile toy. But Noah did not lower his hands. He realized that it requires incredibly great energy to change reality. Looking at the page, he carefully touched his name and moved the lines, changing the direction of his magical power and erasing the boundaries of what he considered possible. At this point, he felt his power began to grow to an incredible level. From him, there was a palpable, incredible force that she did not leave anyone indifferent. All the old restrictions disappeared, and the energy flow became endless. The spirit of darkness looked silently as a turtle, obeying Noah, gradually lost its power. Yun noticed that now the guy completely controls the situation. Noah suddenly rushed forward like a lightning. The spirit, surprised by his determination, asked who he was. The young man firmly ordered to surrender, because now, when he had a Book of Peace, there is no chance of darkness. The spirit smiled with confidence in his own strength, and asked Noah if he was really confident in his victory. Noah only calmly shrugged, already ready for a crucial moment. The angry darkness released the waves of darkness, reminding that he had once defeated the King of Runes, who also had a book. Black clouds hung over the capital, closing the whole sky. The decisive battle for the light was just beginning. The sky above the city became black, as if it were covered with a dark cloud. The pages of the book began to become darker, and it seemed that they were absorbing all the light, as the night gradually displaced the day. Noah glanced into the manuscript with anxiety. His heart shrugged that the mysterious glow could disappear forever. The spirit of darkness smiled ominously and reported that he had sprouted his darkness with the nucleus of this world. Now Noah can no longer get to the peace book. The black curtain further spread, slowly covering the streets of the capital. Suddenly, the strength of the spirit rejected Noah back, and he crashed into the tower from the acceleration. Stones fell around him. The darkness did not stop and rushed again. His voice heard all over the city, raging that everyone was destined to die, plunging into the darkness. The adventurers froze in tense silence, preparing for the worst. But even after a strong blow, Noah rose to his feet. He felt that the forces were leaving his body, and the book remained unattainable, far beyond its capabilities. He looked at the pages again. At first, it seemed that they did not give signs of life, but something made the boy look closer. And then he realized, the surface consists not of one layer, but all covered with tiny signs. The patterns were so small and confusing that Noah had never met anything like that. But if these are really characters, you can try to solve them. Remembering his lonely training, he realized that he did not spend a minute in vain. Right now, his unique gift to see the past had to manifest fully. At that time, the spirit of darkness, confident in his victory, stated with a mockery that the world now belongs to him. Suddenly he noted how the darkness began to scatter. Rays of light began to appear through it. Noah stood on the tower full of determination. His magic did not allow the darkness to take the mountain. He shouted to the enemy, who applied the adamant protection of the turtle's shell to resist the darkness itself. He explained that the whole world is kept on the characters from which its base is woven, and the mysterious Book of Peace makes it possible to change everything that exists. The amazed adventurers watched it, not believing their own eyes. The spirit of darkness could not understand how Noah managed to master this power. Then the guy explained that the turtle shell does not destroy magic, but simply absorbs it in himself. Now this power has become on the side of the light. The turtle's shell constantly absorbed darkness, absorbing the power of the dark spirit and filling it with energy. Its surface slowly shone, reflecting the darkness that had just been absorbed and filled with light from the inside. When Noah saw it, he smiled. His shell not only absorbed the darkness, but also could direct the resulting force against his opponent. He has not yet finished his opinion, as the shell suddenly broke, and a strong flux of mana slammed directly into the very essence of darkness inside. "You chose the wrong enemy," Noah exclaimed. "Otherwise you would have captured this world for a long time." The spirit of darkness shouted at pain. His body began to crack, and even his enormous power could not withstand such a blow. In his view, there was a doubt. Can a person really do it? He remained unchanged himself, but the world around was completely different. People have become more powerful over time. They have already relied not only on magic, but also on the knowledge and experience that have accumulated from generation to generation. At that moment, the book of peace that Noah kept suddenly disappeared with the roar. She fulfilled her purpose. Noah thanked her for her help. Noticing that the right moment had come, the king flew into the sky, heading to the spirit that tried to restore his strength. Noah broke out a bright mana fire, and in his voice there was an unwavering confidence. "You have come to an end." He gathered all his power and used the most powerful technique, absolute flames. The spirit, covered with hellish flames, waved in pain, and Noah stood quietly in the center of the fire circle of fire, confident in his victory. His voice sounded loudly. "This is the finale." A bright wave of flames broke forward and cut the darkness around. The essence of the enemy was protected and began to disintegrate, gradually losing control over itself. June and Claudia were watched, holding his breath. Before their eyes, the spirit was slowly dissolving, like the smoke that blows the wind. All adventure seekers have frozen, unable to take their eyes off the fascinating battle. When the darkness was scattered, the turtle fell to the ground with a roar, forcing the whole capital to shudder. Along with her fall, a long threat that lowered over everyone disappeared. Among the people, a wave of joy and relief swept away. The victory was behind them. The sleepy turtle was finally overcome. Noah soars in the air, calm and collected, quietly saying, "I fulfilled my promise, the world is safe." Noah did not have time to arrange a word as his eyes began to stick together. He suddenly felt his body. June and Claudia froze in surprise, watching him suddenly losing consciousness and falling. Serena rushed forward and exclaimed with pleading, "Please hold on." Alexia suddenly appeared like a real storm, cutting the air around it. Noah almost reached the ground. He was so exhausted that he could neither defend himself nor rise again. Never touched the ground, the girl rushed down, trying to catch up with him during the fall. In the last second, she grabbed the boy, hugged him firmly, and together they fell hard on a stone sidewalk. Alexia took a blow to protect Noah and let him get hurt. While they lay on the earth, the spirit of darkness crawled out of the turtle ruins and began to laugh loudly, watching the destroyed city. He promised with a smile. Even if 100 or 1,000 years has passed, he will definitely return to revenge on Noah's descendants. Suddenly, a bright arrow flew into the darkness that remained after the turtle disappeared. The spirit shuddered from unexpected pain. It was a sacred arrow of Hildeganda. The magician immediately felt that the enemy was surprisingly weak. Without hesitation, he quickly released the second arrow, and she pierced the very essence of darkness. The third arrow fell into the target, and the spirit, squeezing with pain, began to be pleading for mercy. He promised countless power if they conclude an agreement with him. The magician lingered for a moment, listening to the promises, but this was not enough. Hildegand, with cold eyes, released another ball of light. "Maybe if you came a few years ago, something would change," he whispered. "But now it is late." After these words, the spirit crumbled into black ash. The magician waved his hand, stopping the spell, and suddenly felt the mana scattered like a morning fog. Looking at his palm, he whispered the rhyme gently. "A little more, dear." His voice trembles. "Your son saved the whole world. I considered him weak, and now I stand in front of the most powerful magician of our time." Hildegand has sincerely realized that now the title of the strongest in the world is rightly owned by Noah. The name of the boy moon diverged throughout the palace, and in the meantime, someone was gently asking him to stay for a minute. Waking up, Noah slowly opened his eyes and at first could not understand whether it was a dream or a reality. Looking around, he realized that he was in the rooms of Yun. Although he was very exhausted, he had more calm. Alexia was dozing on the floor, slightly leaning into the bed. Noah carefully rose to his feet. It was at this moment that the door opened, and the room entered the Fafnir in the form of a girl, with a spark of curiosity in the eyes. The dragon calmly noted that the fight came out surprisingly exciting. After learning that after the victory was only 1.5 days, Noah was very surprised. It seemed like a whole life. Fafnir noted that when Noah lost consciousness, it was Alexia who came to his aid, saving the boy. Therefore, Noah should be very grateful to her. Noah looked out the window and asked Fafnir about the city. He smiled and replied that there is an active reconstruction now, and the residents thank him and appreciate his help. Fairy inhabitants flew into the room. They immediately undertook to help the wounded, and the locals thanked them for their heart. When asked why Fafnir still looks like a man, he replied that he did not want to scare people during volunteer work. Noah smiled, and it was at this moment that Alexia woke up. He quietly apologized that he had disturbed her sleep. She looked up sleepily. She was amazed when she saw that Noah was already standing. Serena entered the room with a joyful smile and exclaimed that he was glad to see him in consciousness. Yun came immediately behind her. Noah sincerely congratulated the girls, not even suspecting that they both fought on the front line. Serena quickly started a lively conversation about the reconstruction plans, and Alexia sat quietly on the edge of the bed and watched carefully. In her gaze, a jealous shadow flashed for a moment when she first glanced at a carefree Serena. Soon, Noah and Alexia appeared before the king. He looked at them strictly and immediately reported that he had already heard all the details from the young. The king proudly thanked them for bravery and solemnly announced, "Alexei now receives the title of a second-class magician, and Noah becomes a first-class magician, the highest reward for the magician in the whole kingdom." Noah thanked, and seeing that Alexia was confused, calmly explained, "It is a great honor, so it should be taken with pride." The monarch sincerely thanked the fact that Noah saved his daughter Claudia. Noah became aware that during the battle he did not even know who she really was. The king, thoughtfully stroking his beard, said with a serious look that he wanted to talk about the fate of Noah and his father. He was heard rumors that Gildendanda rented his son and drove him from home. If this is really the case, the father will have to answer his act. Noah tilted his head, agreeing with it, but did not make a conversation to end with thoughts about revenge. The young man got up and confidently said that his father became different. He looked at Alexia, and after a small pause she agreed with him. Noah shared that his mother died when he was born. From this grief, his father became tougher and evil. But Noah is not offended by him, and asks for his father forgiveness. The king's face became better, and he asked Noah if he had just forgiven him. The guy nodded confidently. "I am convinced that this is the right decision." Claudia reminded everyone of a future meeting. The king returned to reality and once again thanked Noah for the salvation of the kingdom. The monarch rose, wished everyone a good and easy movement of his hand. The guards invited Noah and Alexia to follow them. They looked over surprised, but decided to go further along the corridor. Suddenly before them opened the door. When they went out to the balcony, the crowd met them with loud ovation. Thousands of people applauded and thanked, filling the air with joyful and loud noise. Noah and Alexia rose, feeling pride in the heart, and sincere gratitude glowed on their faces. The crowd sincerely thanked the heroes for victory over a sleepy turtle. Two defenders exchanged views and felt all their efforts were not in vain. Yun and Serena stood nearby. Their faces radiated pride for victory together. And Nisa, sitting on the back of Fenrir, smiled, admiring the joyful atmosphere of the holiday. A huge adventure called Sleeping the Sleepy Turtle finally ended. All the battles and losses were not in vain, because all this brought the heroes to this triumphant moment. Suddenly Yun's voice came in the estate. "Noah, are you already going?" He sounded impatiently. Everyone died down and looked around for this exclamation. Noah stood on the threshold, nodded silently and smiled. New roads were waiting for him, but the promise was always remained with him.